The massive derelict spaceship looms in the void of the Sol system, a silent sentinel of an ancient civilization. As Earth's United Space Command shuttle approaches, Brian Johnson, a 35-year-old xenobiologist, presses his face against the viewport. His unorthodox theories about extinct alien species have made him a controversial figure, but now they've earned him a reluctant place on this expedition. The shuttle docks with a metallic thud. Brian steps onto the alien vessel, his heart racing with anticipation. The ship's cavernous interior stretches before him, filled with unfamiliar technology and strange, organic-looking structures. He recognizes the distinct bioengineering hallmarks of the precursors, an ancient race known for their advanced capabilities. As Brian's team moves deeper into the ship, they encounter another group of researchers. The Norcadians, led by a tall, willowy female named Vita, regard the humans with thinly veiled disdain. Their frail bodies belie their technological superiority, evident in the advanced scanning equipment they carry. Vita's gaze fixes on Brian. "Ah, the human with the wild theories about precursor life forms," she says, her voice dripping with condescension. "I hope you're not expecting to find any of your imaginary creatures here." Brian bristles but holds his tongue. He focuses on the intricate patterns etched into the walls, recognizing similarities to Earth's prehistoric cave paintings. As he runs his hand along the surface, his fingers catch on a hidden seam. Suddenly, the wall before him splits open, revealing a dark chamber. A low growl emanates from within, sending chills down Brian's spine. Before anyone can react, a massive creature bursts forth, all razor-sharp claws and gleaming teeth. It's like a nightmarish fusion of a saber-toothed tiger and a velociraptor, its scales shimmering in the dim light. The Norcadian security team opens fire, their energy weapons leaving scorch marks on the beast's hide. It roars in fury, swatting them aside like toys. Panic erupts as both human and Norcadian researchers scatter. Brian stands his ground, his mind racing. The creature's movements, its attack patterns, they're familiar. He's seen this behavior before in Earth's ancient apex predators. As the beast corners the group, Brian makes a split-second decision. He steps forward, ignoring the horrified gasps from his colleagues. Vita hisses, "What are you doing, you fool? You'll get us all killed." Brian ignores her, focusing on the predator. He lowers his body, mimicking the posture of a submissive animal. His throat constricts as he attempts to recreate the vocalizations he's only heard in reconstructed audio files of long-extinct species. The creature pauses, its head tilting in curiosity. It takes a step closer, sniffing the air. Brian holds his breath, every muscle in his body tense. For a moment, time seems to stand still. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the beast responds. It echoes Brian's call, its aggressive stance softening. The human and precursor creation regard each other, a silent understanding passing between them. The moment is shattered by a deep rumble that shakes the entire ship. Lights flicker to life along the corridors, and a low hum fills the air. Brian's eyes widen as he realizes the implications. "The ship," he breathes, "it's waking up." Vita's earlier arrogance has vanished, replaced by fear. "What have you done?" she demands. Brian meets her gaze, a mix of excitement and apprehension coursing through him. "I don't know," he admits, "but I think we're about to find out." As systems throughout the massive vessel spring to life, Brian knows that everything has changed. The immediate threat of the precursor predator pales in comparison to the potential dangers and wonders that the awakening ship might hold. And somehow, he's certain that his unconventional knowledge will be the key to navigating whatever comes next. With the eyes of both humans and Norcadians upon him, Brian takes a deep breath. The fate of this mission, and perhaps humanity's place in the cosmos, now rests on his shoulders. It's time to prove that sometimes the most unorthodox approach is exactly what's needed to change the course of history. The ship's sudden awakening sent tremors through its ancient hull, disrupting the tense standoff between Brian and the Xenoraptor. The creature's eyes darted wildly as holographic displays flickered to life around them, casting an otherworldly blue glow across its scales. Brian held his ground, maintaining the submissive posture that had momentarily calmed the beast. but the fragile piece shattered in an instant. A piercing shriek erupted from the Xenoraptor's throat, its muscles coiling in preparation to flee. Brian's heart raced as he realized the danger of letting this apex predator loose in the labyrinthine ship. "Wait!" he called out, but it was too late. The creature bolted, its claws scrabbling against the metallic floor as it disappeared down a dimly lit corridor. Without hesitation, Brian sprinted after it, ignoring the shocked cries of both human and Norcadian team members behind him. Vida's voice cut through the chaos. "Johnson, you fool! Get back here!" But Brian was already gone, his footsteps echoing through the awakening vessel. As he ran, the ship's systems continued to surge to life around him. Panels slid open, revealing glimpses of alien machinery. The air hummed with building energy, and Brian felt a strange lightness in his steps. Suddenly he was airborne, the ship's gravity fluctuating wildly. He flailed, grasping for purchase as he floated momentarily before crashing back to the floor. The Xenoraptor, he noticed, seemed equally disoriented, its powerful legs now a hindrance as it bounced off walls and ceilings. Taking advantage of the creature's confusion, Brian pressed on, using the erratic gravity to propel himself forward. He caught fleeting glimpses of the Xenoraptor ahead, its tail whipping around corners as it fled deeper into the ship's bowels. Behind him, chaos erupted. The sound of grinding metal filled the air as massive bulkheads began to descend, threatening to seal off entire sections of the ship. Brian's comlink crackled to life, Commander Stone's voice barely audible through the static. "Johnson, back now! The ship's sealing itself. Can't reach." The transmission cut out as Brian rounded another corner, the bulkhead slamming shut behind him. He was now truly alone, cut off from the rest of the team and in pursuit of a deadly predator. The chase led him through a maze of corridors, each turn revealing new wonders and terrors of precursor technology. Brian's scientific mind raced, cataloging details even as he ran. The organic curves of the ship's interior, the pulsing bioluminescent veins running along the walls. It was all beyond his wildest theories. Suddenly, the corridor opened into a vast chamber that took Brian's breath away. Rows upon rows of cylindrical pods filled the space, each one large enough to hold a being the size of the Xenoraptor. Most were dark and lifeless, but a few had begun to glow with an inner light. The Xenoraptor skidded to a halt in the center of the chamber, its head swiveling as it took in the sight. Brian approached cautiously, his eyes darting between the creature and the pods. As he drew closer, he gasped. Inside the glowing pods, he could make out the shadowy forms of more Xenoraptors, their bodies motionless but undeniably alive. "They're in stasis," Brian muttered, his heart pounding at the implications. This wasn't just a lone specimen, it was part of a carefully preserved group. But why? What purpose could the precursors have had for maintaining a population of apex predators? His musings were cut short as the ship's systems surged again. More pods began to activate, their occupants stirring within. The awakened Xenoraptor let out a low growl, moving towards its brethren. Brian's heart pounded as he realized the danger. One Xenoraptor was bad enough. A pack of them would be catastrophic. He frantically scanned the chamber, looking for anything that might help him halt the revival process. His eyes landed on a control panel near the center of the room, its surface covered in alien symbols. As he approached it, the panel came to life, responding to his presence. Brian's fingers hovered over the controls, his mind racing to decipher their meaning. A snarl from behind reminded him of the immediate threat. The Xenoraptor was watching him, its posture tense but not overtly aggressive. Brian forced himself to remain calm, drawing on the techniques he'd used earlier to communicate with the creature. He lowered his body, making soft vocalizations that he hoped would convey non-aggression. The Xenoraptor tilted its head, curiosity seeming to overcome its predatory instincts. It took a step closer, nostrils flaring as it scented the air. As Brian maintained this delicate balance, his free hand worked the control panel. He couldn't understand the symbols, but he could see the effect his actions were having on the stasis pods. Some dimmed, while others pulsed more brightly. He prayed he wasn't about to make things worse. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the chamber. The ship's engines roared to life, the sound reverberating through the metal floors. The Xenoraptor reared back, startled by the noise. Brian stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the control panel. As he regained his footing, he noticed a change in the chamber. The glowing pods had dimmed, their revival process seemingly halted. But the ship itself was far from dormant. If anything, it felt like it was preparing for something monumental. Brian's relief at stopping the Xenoraptor's awakening was short-lived. He realized with growing dread that he had no idea where this ship was headed, or if he and the rest of the team would be on it when it departed. The Xenoraptor, sensing the change in its environment, began to pace nervously. Brian watched it, knowing he needed to find a way to contain it and reunite with the others. But with the ship's systems activating around him and the threat of more predators looming, he felt overwhelmed by the enormity of the task ahead. In the distance, he thought he heard voices calling his name. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? And what new challenges would they face in this awakening vessel of a long-lost alien civilization? Brian took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever came next. The Xenoraptor's eyes met his, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever happened, they were in this together now. An unlikely pair navigating the unknown depths of a precursor ship hurtling towards an uncertain destination. Brian's heart raced as he assessed the situation, acutely aware of the growing danger surrounding him. The ship's engines reached a fever pitch, their rumble reverberating through the chamber. Cracks began to appear on the surface of the stasis pods, hairline fractures spreading like spiderwebs across their translucent surfaces. Brian's eyes darted from pod to pod, counting dozens of Xenoraptors in various stages of reanimation. Time was running out. Drawing on his extensive knowledge of Earth's prehistoric creatures, Brian's mind raced to formulate a plan. He recalled the pack dynamics of modern wolves and ancient raptors, a desperate idea taking shape. With careful, deliberate movements, Brian lowered his body into a hunched posture, making himself appear smaller and less threatening. He kept his eyes fixed on the first Xenoraptor to fully emerge from its pod, a massive, battle-scarred creature that radiated an air of authority. This, Brian realized, was the pack's alpha. The alpha's yellow eyes locked onto Brian, its nostrils flaring as it scented the air. Brian held his ground, maintaining eye contact while projecting an aura of calm submission. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced his breathing to remain steady. A low growl rumbled from the alpha's throat, and Brian responded with a soft vocalization, mimicking the sounds he'd used earlier to communicate with the first Xenoraptor. The alpha's head tilted, curiosity replacing aggression in its gaze. Encouraged by this response, Brian slowly began to move towards a control panel he'd spotted earlier. He maintained his non-threatening posture, moving with exaggerated care. To his surprise and relief, the alpha followed, its powerful legs carrying it forward with predatory grace. As Brian inched closer to the panel, more pods cracked open. Disoriented Xenoraptors stumbled out, their claws clicking against the metal floor. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. Reaching the panel, Brian's fingers hovered over the alien symbols. He glanced at the alpha, which watched him with apparent interest. Taking a deep breath, Brian pressed a sequence of buttons, praying his understanding of precursor bioengineering would prove useful. To his immense relief, the revival process for the remaining pods slowed. But before Brian could celebrate this small victory, the ship lurched violently. Energy surges coursed through the vessel, accelerating the awakening of the remaining Xenoraptors. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Newly revived predators stumbled about, disoriented and increasingly aggressive. Brian found himself at the center of a growing circle of Xenoraptors, the alpha still by his side but clearly agitated by the commotion. In the distance, Brian heard familiar voices. "Johnson, can you hear us?" It was Commander Stone, his voice strained with urgency. "Over here," Brian called back, careful to keep his voice low and steady. He didn't want to startle the Xenoraptors surrounding him. The sound of running footsteps grew closer, accompanied by the hum of energy weapons powering up. Brian's heart sank as he realized the potential for disaster if the rescue team burst in guns blazing. "Wait," he shouted. "Don't come in shooting. I've got it under control. Sort of. Brian turned his attention back to the Alpha Xenoraptor, which was now pacing nervously. He lowered his body further, making soft, chirping sounds deep in his throat. The Alpha's eyes narrowed, but it didn't attack. Emboldened, Brian attempted to extend his influence over the entire pack. He moved slowly, deliberately, mimicking the body language he'd observed in the Alpha. To his amazement, some of the other Xenoraptors began to calm, their aggressive postures relaxing slightly. Just then, Commander Stone and his team appeared at the chamber's entrance. Their eyes widened at the sight before them. Brian Johnson, surrounded by a pack of prehistoric predators, seemingly holding them at bay through sheer force of will. "Johnson," Stone whispered, his voice tight with tension. "What the hell is going on?" Before Brian could respond, the ship shuddered again. A computerized voice echoed through the chamber, its words sending a chill down Brian's spine. "Jump sequence entering final stage. Prepare for dimensional shift in T-minus 60 seconds. Brian locked eyes with Commander Stone, the gravity of their situation hitting home. They were out of time. Whatever happened next would determine not just their fate, but potentially the course of human and Norcadian history. As the countdown began, Brian faced the pack of Xenoraptors, his mind racing to find a solution that would ensure their survival, and perhaps forge an unlikely alliance in the face of the unknown that awaited them all. As the countdown echoed through the chamber, Brian's mind raced. He couldn't give up now, not when they were on the brink of something unprecedented. Drawing upon his knowledge of pack dynamics, he made a bold decision. "Commander," Brian called out, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding him. "I need you to trust me. These creatures, I think I can control them." Stone's eyes widened, but he nodded, signaling his team to hold their position. Brian turned his attention back to the Xenoraptors, focusing on the Alpha. He lowered his body further, making soft, rhythmic chirps deep in his throat. The Alpha's eyes narrowed, its head tilting in curiosity. Slowly, deliberately, Brian began to move. He mimicked the Alpha's body language, projecting an aura of calm authority. To his amazement, the other Xenoraptors began to respond. Their aggressive postures softened, eyes locked on Brian as if waiting for direction. "It's working," Brian whispered, hardly daring to believe it. The ship lurched again, sending several newly awakened Xenoraptors stumbling. Brian reacted instinctively, moving to steady the nearest creature. His hand touched its scaly hide, and he felt a spark of connection. "Johnson," Stone's voice cut through the din. "We need to move, now." Brian nodded, then turned to face the pack. With a series of vocalizations and gestures, he began to guide them towards the chamber's exit. The Xenoraptors followed, forming a protective circle around him. As they moved through the ship's corridors, they encountered more awakening predators. Brian's influence extended to these newcomers, the growing pack falling into line behind him. Meanwhile, in the control room, Alex Chen's fingers flew across alien interfaces. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought against the ship's systems. "It's no use," he growled in frustration. "The controls are biolocked. We need precursor DNA to override the jump sequence." Dr. Alara Voss, who had just rejoined the team, leaned over his shoulder. Her eyes widened as she took in the displays. "Wait," she said, pointing to a pulsing symbol. "I've seen this before. It's not just a lock. It's a key." As Voss explained her theory about the ship's jump being part of a larger precursor plan, Vita, the Norcadian scientist, paced nervously. Her antenna twitched as she processed the information. "We can't just let this ship jump blindly," Vita argued. "The consequences could be catastrophic." "But interfering might be equally dangerous," Voss countered. "We don't know enough about precursor technology to predict the outcome." Their debate was cut short as Commander Stone's voice crackled over the comms. "Chen, we're heading your way, and we've got company." The control room team watched in disbelief as Brian entered, surrounded by a pack of docile Xenoraptors. Stone and his team followed cautiously, weapons lowered but ready. "By the stars," Vita breathed, her antenna quivering. "How did you—" "No time to explain," Brian said, his voice strained with concentration. "What's our status?" Alex quickly briefed them on the biolock problem. Brian's eyes lit up. "The Xenoraptors," he said. "Could their DNA work?" Before anyone could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared as more systems overloaded. "We're out of time," Stone growled. "Chen, can you redirect the jump? We need options." Alex's fingers danced across the controls. "I might be able to change our destination to an uninhabited planet, but it's risky. We could end up anywhere." As the team debated their limited options, Dr. Voss's eyes darted around the room. Something about the ship's layout nagged at her. "Wait," she said suddenly. "There might be another way." All eyes turned to her as she explained her theory about a hidden override mechanism. "It's a long shot," she admitted, "but if I'm right, we might be able to gain control without using Xenoraptor DNA." "Where is this mechanism?" Stone demanded. Voss grimaced. "That's the problem. It's likely in a part of the ship we haven't explored yet, a part that's probably overrun with awakened Xenoraptors by now." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then Vita stepped forward, her eyes locked on Brian. "You," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and grit. "Your connection with these creatures. We can use it." Brian looked at her, then at the pack of Xenoraptors still clustered around him. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Commander," Vita said, turning to Stone, "I propose we use Brian's influence to guide the Xenoraptors. They can clear a path to the override mechanism." Stone's eyes hardened as he weighed their options. The ship trembled around them, a constant reminder of the dwindling time. Finally, he nodded. "Do it," he ordered, "but we move fast and stay together." As the team prepared to venture into the unknown depths of the ship, Brian took a deep breath. He locked eyes with the Alpha Xenoraptor, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Whatever happened next would change everything. With a final look at his teammates, Brian stepped forward, the pack moving with him. As they left the control room, the ship's automated voice announced, "Dimensional shift imminent. Prepare for jump in T-minus 30 seconds." The race against time had begun. Brian's heart raced as he locked eyes with Commander Stone, the gravity of their situation pressing down on them like a physical weight. Stone's heart made as he surveyed the chaotic scene before him. Dozens of awakened Xenoraptors, a ship on the brink of an uncontrolled dimensional jump, and a team stretched to its limits. In that split second, a plan crystallized in his mind. "Johnson, you're with me," Stone barked, his voice cutting through the din of alarms and growling predators. "Use your influence over these creatures to clear us a path. Dr. Voss, take Vita and 2 of my security team. Find that override mechanism." Brian nodded, turning to face the pack of Xenoraptors clustered around him. He lowered his body, mimicking the Alpha's stance, and let out a series of low chirps. The Alpha's eyes narrowed, its head tilting in curiosity. As Brian began to move towards the exit, the pack followed, forming a protective circle around him and Stone. They moved through the ship's corridors, Brian guiding the Xenoraptors with a combination of vocalizations and body language. Suddenly, the Alpha let out a challenging roar, its posture shifting from curious to aggressive. Brian's breath caught in his throat as he realized the precariousness of his position. The stress of the situation, combined with the influx of newly awakened pack members, had prompted the Alpha to contest his leadership. Brian knew he had seconds to respond. Physical confrontation was out of the question. Any sign of weakness could turn the entire pack against him. Drawing upon everything he'd learned about pack dynamics, Brian straightened his posture and met the Alpha's gaze head-on. He let out a deep, resonant growl, modulating his voice to mimic the frequencies he'd observed in Xenoraptor vocalizations. His hands moved in sharp, decisive gestures, mimicking the head movements of a dominant raptor. The Alpha hesitated, its aggressive stance faltering. Brian pressed his advantage, taking a step forward and continuing his display of dominance. After a tense moment that felt like an eternity, the Alpha lowered its head in submission. Stone, who had been watching the exchange with suspenseful pause, let out a low whistle. "Impressive, Johnson. Now let's move." As they continued through the ship, they encountered more obstacles: collapsed bulkheads, malfunctioning doors, and debris from the ship's increasing instability. Brian directed the Xenoraptors to clear the path, their powerful claws and jaws making short work of the obstructions. Meanwhile, Dr. Voss led her team through the labyrinthine structure of the precursor ship, Her eyes darted from wall to wall, deciphering the alien symbols that covered every surface. "This way," she called out, guiding them down a narrow corridor. Suddenly, the gravity plating beneath their feet flickered and died. Vida let out a startled chirp as she began to float upwards. "Everyone, grab onto something!" Voss shouted, reaching out to snag Vida's arm. The team clung to the walls and each other, slowly making their way through the zero-G section of the ship. As they navigated the weightless environment, a series of panels on the walls began to glow ominously. Beams of energy shot out, crisscrossing the corridor. "Automated defense systems," Voss muttered, her eyes scanning the symbols around them. "Hold on, I think I can bypass them." Her fingers danced across a nearby control panel, inputting a complex sequence of commands. The energy beams flickered and died, allowing them to pass safely. Back in the control room, Alex Chen's fingers flew across the alien interfaces. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought against the ship's systems. A breakthrough in understanding the navigation controls brought a moment of triumph, quickly followed by frustration. "Commander," he called over the comm, "I can redirect the jump, but it requires simultaneous input from multiple stations throughout the ship." Stone's voice crackled back, tight with tension. "Understood. I'm dispatching teams now. How long do we have?" Alex glanced at the countdown timer, his stomach dropping. "Less than 10 minutes, sir." As the ship's energy buildup intensified, Brian noticed the Xenoraptors becoming increasingly agitated. Their movements became erratic, eyes darting wildly as they sensed the growing instability around them. Thinking quickly, Brian changed his approach. Instead of trying to calm them, he channeled their heightened state into purposeful action. With a series of sharp chirps and gestures, he directed the pack to tear through a malfunctioning door blocking their path. The Xenoraptors attacked the obstacle with renewed vigor, their claws and teeth making short work of the metal barrier. As they broke through, Brian felt a surge of pride and amazement at the unlikely alliance they'd formed. Dr. Voss's team finally reached the location of the override mechanism, only to find themselves facing a vast chasm. The bridge that should have connected the two sides of the ship had collapsed, leaving a gaping void. Vida stepped forward, her antenna twitching as she assessed the situation. "The ship's energy fluctuations," she said, her voice filled with sudden inspiration. "We can use them to our advantage." She quickly outlined a plan to create a temporary energy bridge by rerouting power from nearby systems. It was risky, but with time running out, they had no choice. As Vida and one of the security officers worked to set up the energy bridge, Voss's eyes widened in realization. "We have another problem," she said, pointing to a biometric scanner next to the sealed chamber housing the override mechanism. "It requires precursor DNA to open." Just then, Brian's group arrived, the pack of Xenoraptors in tow. Brian's eyes locked onto the scanner, a wild idea forming in his mind. "The Xenoraptors," he said, breathless from their journey. "They're precursor creations. Their DNA might be close enough to work." As the ship entered the final stages of its jump sequence, massive energy surges rocked the vessel. Alarms blared, and the very structure of the ship seemed to groan under the strain. Brian turned to the Alpha Xenoraptor, gesturing towards the scanner. The creature hesitated, sensing the danger around them. Brian's heart pounded as he realized that everything hinged on this moment. Slowly, carefully, he began to vocalize, using every ounce of the connection he'd formed with the pack. He projected calm authority, urging the Alpha forward. The Xenoraptor took one step, then another, its eyes never leaving Brian's. As the Alpha approached the scanner, time seemed to slow. The ship trembled, teetering on the edge of the dimensional jump. Brian held his breath, silently willing the creature to make contact with the scanner. The Alpha's snout touched the glowing panel. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss of escaping air, the sealed chamber began to open. Dr. Voss rushed forward, her eyes quickly assessing the alien technology within. Her face fell as she turned to the group. "We're too late to stop the jump entirely," she announced. "But we might be able to modify the coordinates and keep the ship intact through the transition." As the realization of their new challenge sank in, the team sprang into action. Brian began directing the Xenoraptors to key areas of the ship, using their strength and agility to stabilize critical systems. Dr. Voss and Vita worked furiously at the override controls, inputting new coordinates while simultaneously reinforcing the ship's structural integrity fields. The countdown reached its final seconds. Energy crackled around them, the very fabric of space-time beginning to warp. As the dimensional jump initiated, Brian found himself surrounded by his unlikely pack of prehistoric predators, all of them hurtling towards an unknown future. The ship shuddered violently, reality itself seeming to twist and bend around them. In those last moments before the jump completed, Brian caught Commander Stone's eye. They shared a look of relentless drive, knowing that their next challenge and opportunity lay ahead. The ship's violent shaking intensified as the dimensional jump began in earnest. Brian, still surrounded by his pack of Xenoraptors, felt a surge of persistence course through him. "Everyone, hold on!" Commander Stone's voice echoed through the ship's intercom system, barely audible over the cacophony of alarms and groaning metal. Brian turned to the Xenoraptors, his eyes locking with the Alphas. With a series of sharp chirps and gestures, he directed the pack to spread out through the ship's corridors. The prehistoric predators moved with surprising grace, their powerful bodies navigating the chaos with ease. As Brian led his group through the twisting passageways, he witnessed the Xenoraptors' incredible strength firsthand. At key structural weak points, the creatures used their razor-sharp claws and powerful jaws to reinforce bulkheads and seal breaches caused by the mounting energy surges. Meanwhile, Dr. Ilara Voss and her team reached the override mechanism chamber, their faces etched with concentration as they worked frantically to input the new coordinates. The ship's systems fluctuated wildly, causing violent tremors that threatened to throw them off balance. Vita, the Norcadian scientist, stepped forward, her antenna twitching with nervous energy. "I can stabilize the power flow," she announced, her fingers dancing across an alien control panel. "It should give you the time you need, Dr. Voss." Ilara nodded gratefully, her eyes never leaving the complex array of symbols before her. "Thank you, Vita. Let's hope this works." In the main control room, Alex Chen's eyes widened as he made a startling discovery. "Commander!" he called out over the comm system, his voice tight with tension. The ship's original jump coordinates weren't random. They were targeting a specific location outside our known galaxy. Stone's voice crackled back. "Any idea what that means, Chen?" "Not yet, sir," Alex replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "But it suggests the precursors had a particular purpose for this ship and its cargo. I'm focusing on integrating the new coordinates now." As the final moments before the jump approached, Brian felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of danger. His connection to the Xenoraptors thrummed with urgency, guiding him towards the ship's engine room. Without hesitation, he sprinted down the corridor, his pack following close behind. The scene that greeted them in the engine room was unlike anything Brian had ever seen. A massive Xenoraptor, easily twice the size of the others, was connected to the ship's power core through a series of pulsing biomechanical interfaces. The creature's eyes were half closed, its massive body trembling with obvious distress. Brian approached slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. He recognized the creature for what it was, an Alpha Prime, the key to controlling the ship's power systems. As he drew closer, the Alpha Prime's eyes snapped open, fixing Brian with a gaze of primal intensity. Drawing upon every ounce of his newfound connection with the Xenoraptors, Brian began to vocalize. He mixed low, soothing chirps with submissive postures, trying to convey his desire to help. The Alpha Prime resisted at first, its massive tail lashing out and nearly catching Brian across the chest. Undeterred, Brian pressed on. He could feel the ship's energy buildup reaching critical levels, systems throughout the vessel failing or behaving erratically. Time was running out. In a moment of desperation, Brian locked eyes with the Alpha Prime and let out a series of vocalizations that came from deep within him, tapping into instincts he didn't know he possessed. The massive creature paused, its head tilting slightly as it regarded Brian with newfound curiosity. Slowly, carefully, Brian extended his hand towards the Alpha Prime's snout. The tension in the room was palpable, the other Xenoraptors watching the exchange with rapt attention. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a gentleness that belied its enormous size, the Alpha Prime pressed its snout against Brian's palm. A surge of connection flowed between them, and Brian felt the creature's pain and confusion as if it were his own. "It's okay," Brian murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're here to help. Let me show you." Through their newly forged bond, Brian guided the Alpha Prime. The massive Xenoraptor's eyes cleared, and it turned its attention to the ship's systems. Using its biomechanical link, the Alpha Prime began to stabilize the power core, its actions precise and deliberate. Throughout the ship, the violent shaking began to subside. In the override mechanism chamber, Dr. Voss let out a triumphant cry as she completed the input of the new coordinates. "It's done!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with relief and exhaustion. Commander Stone's voice rang out over the intercom once more. "All teams, brace for jump. This is it, people." As reality began to bend around them, Brian placed a steadying hand on the Alpha Prime's flank. The massive creature let out a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through Brian's entire body. Together, they weathered the storm of the dimensional jump, the ship straining against the forces of faster-than-light travel. When the jump finally ended, an eerie silence fell over the ship. Slowly, systems began to come back online, status reports flooding in from all corners of the vessel. Brian and the Xenoraptors made their way to the main control room, joining the rest of the team as they gathered to assess their situation. Alex Chen's voice was filled with awe as he reported their position. "Commander, you're not going to believe this. We're in orbit around an Earth-like planet, unlike anything we've ever seen before." As the main view screen flickered to life, a collective gasp went through the room. The planet before them was a vibrant tapestry of blues and greens, its surface dotted with what appeared to be the geometric patterns of advanced civilization. Commander Stone stepped forward, his expression a mixture of wonder and apprehension. "It seems we've found the precursor's intended destination," he said, his eyes never leaving the screen. "The question is, what do we do now?" Brian felt the weight of the Alpha Prime's gaze on him, and he knew that their adventure was just getting started. As the combined human and Norcadian teams began to discuss their next moves, Brian couldn't shake the feeling that the true purpose of the Xenoraptors and their role on this mysterious new world was a mystery that had only just begun to unfold. The room fell silent as the team contemplated their next steps. Suddenly, Commander Stone's voice crackled through the intercom, breaking the tense silence. "All senior personnel, report to the bridge immediately. We have a situation." Brian exchanged glances with Dr. Voss and Vita before hurrying towards the bridge, the Alpha Prime, and a small contingent of Xenoraptors following close behind. As they entered, they found Stone hunched over a holographic display, his face etched with concern. "We've detected multiple unidentified vessels approaching the planet," Stone announced, gesturing to the swirling mass of data before him. "They're unlike anything we've seen before." Alex Chen's fingers flew across his console as he brought up a series of images on the main view screen. The ships were sleek and angular, their hulls shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Sir," Chen reported, his voice tense, "we've attempted to hail them, but there's been no response. They're maintaining their course towards the planet's surface." Stone turned to the assembled team, his eyes landing on Brian. "Johnson, I need you to lead a recon mission to the surface. We need to gather intel on this planet and its inhabitants before these new arrivals make planetfall." Brian nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Understood, sir. Who's coming with me?" "Dr. Voss, Vita, and 2 of our security officers will accompany you," Stone replied. "And of course, your companions." He gestured to the Xenoraptors, who stood at attention behind Brian. Within minutes, the team was aboard a shuttle, descending through the planet's atmosphere. As they broke through the cloud cover, Brian's breath caught in his throat. The landscape below was a vibrant tapestry of blues and greens, dotted with massive structures that seemed to blend seamlessly with the natural environment. "It's beautiful," Vita whispered, her antenna twitching with excitement, "like nothing I've ever seen before." As they approached their designated landing zone, Brian noticed that the vegetation bore a striking resemblance to Earth's prehistoric flora. Massive ferns and cycads dominated the landscape, creating a lush canopy that stretched as far as the eye could see. The shuttle touched down in a small clearing near one of the towering structures. As the team disembarked, Brian felt the xenoraptors grow more alert and energetic, as if invigorated by their surroundings. This environment, Dr. Voss mused, her eyes scanning their surroundings, it's perfect for the xenoraptors, almost as if it were designed for them. Before Brian could respond, a rustling in the nearby foliage caught his attention. He signaled for the team to stay alert as he took a cautious step forward. Suddenly, a group of tall, slender beings emerged from the undergrowth. The creatures were unlike anything Brian had ever seen. Their skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, and their elongated limbs moved with an otherworldly grace. As they approached, Brian felt a sense of awe and reverence emanating from the xenoraptors. "Hello," Brian called out, keeping his voice low and calm. "We come in peace." The beings tilted their heads in unison, studying the group with large, luminous eyes. Their gaze lingered on Brian and the xenoraptors, and a series of soft, melodic sounds passed between them. Vida stepped forward, her antenna waving gently. "I believe they're trying to communicate," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "But it's unlike any language I've ever encountered." As the team watched, one of the beings approached Brian, its movements slow and deliberate. It raised a hand, palm outward, and made a series of intricate gestures. To Brian's surprise, he felt a faint resonance in his mind, as if the creature were attempting to establish a connection similar to the one he shared with the xenoraptors. Dr. Voss's eyes widened as she observed the interaction. "Brian," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I think they recognize you. Or rather, they recognize your connection to the xenoraptors." The being's gestures became more animated, and it turned to its companions, vocalizing in a series of rapid musical tones. The others responded with nods and gestures of their own before turning back to the team. "I think they want us to follow them," Brian said, feeling a gentle urge in his mind. The team exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. As they set off after the strange beings, Brian couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering something monumental. The beings led them through the lush forest towards one of the massive structures they had seen from the air. As they drew closer, Brian realized that the building was far more than just a simple edifice. It seemed to pulse with an inner light, its organic curves seamlessly blending technology and nature. "Incredible?" Dr. Voss breathed, her scientific curiosity overtaking her caution. "This architecture, it's as if the building is alive." As they approached the entrance, the structure seemed to respond to their presence. A shimmering portal materialized before them, inviting them inside. The beings gestured for the team to enter, their expressions a mixture of reverence and excitement. Brian took a deep breath, sharing a look with his teammates. "Well," he said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth, "shall we see what secrets this place holds?" With the xenoraptors at his side and his team at his back, Brian stepped through the portal, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they entered the structure, none of them could have anticipated the revelations that awaited them, or the impending arrival of the mysterious ships that would soon change everything. As they entered the structure, the world around them transformed. The organic architecture pulsed with an inner light, guiding them deeper into its heart. Brian felt a surge of excitement, tempered by the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Their exploration was cut short by a sudden crackle of static from their communication devices. Commander Stone's voice, urgent and clear, broke through the interference. "Johnson, do you read? We have a situation up here." Brian pressed his hand to his earpiece, signaling for the team to halt. "Go ahead, Commander. What's happening?" "Multiple unidentified vessels are descending towards the planet's surface. They're not responding to hails, and their trajectory suggests hostile intent. We need you to secure that structure and prepare for potential contact." The team exchanged worried glances. Dr. Voss stepped forward, her eyes wide with concern. "Commander, we've just made contact with the indigenous species. They seem to recognize our connection to the xenoraptors. We might be on the verge of a breakthrough here." Stone's voice was grim. "Understood, Doctor, but our priority now is defense. Johnson, I need you to coordinate with the xenoraptors. Use them to set up a perimeter around that structure. We're sending reinforcements your way, but you're our first line of defense. Brian nodded, already reaching out through his mental link to the Xenoraptors. Copy that, Commander. We'll hold the line. As Brian began organizing the Xenoraptors into defensive formations, Dr. Voss and Vita turned their attention to the luminous beings. Through a combination of gestures and rudimentary telepathy, they managed to convey the urgency of the situation. The beings' reaction was immediate. They led the team deeper into the structure towards what appeared to be a central control room. As they entered, holographic displays sprang to life, showing the approaching ships in vivid detail. Incredible, Vita breathed, her antennae twitching with excitement. This must be some kind of planetary defense system. Dr. Voss was already examining the biomechanical interfaces that lined the walls. It seems dormant, but if we can figure out how to activate it... Their musings were interrupted by the sound of distant explosions. Brian's voice came through their comms, tense but controlled. Heads up, team. The bogies have started landing. They're deploying ground forces, and they don't look friendly. Outside, Brian watched as the sky filled with sleek, angular ships. They descended with deadly precision, disgorging squads of cybernetic warriors. The Xenoraptors, sensing the threat, let out a chorus of piercing shrieks. Brian's mind raced as he assessed the situation. He directed groups of Xenoraptors to intercept the landing forces, using their speed and ferocity to disrupt the invaders' formations. The prehistoric predators moved with uncanny coordination, striking at weak points and retreating before the cyborg troops could mount an effective counterattack. Inside the structure, Dr. Voss and Vita worked feverishly to decipher the activation sequence for the planetary shield. Alex Chen, newly arrived with the reinforcements, joined them, his expertise in alien systems proving invaluable. "It's like nothing I've ever seen," Chen muttered, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. "But there's a pattern here. If we can just..." Suddenly, the displays flickered, and a new image appeared. It showed the approaching Ravager ships, their trajectories clearly aimed at key points around the planet. "They're after the precursor technology," Vita realized, her voice filled with dread. "They must have followed us here somehow." Outside, the battle intensified. The Xenoraptors fought with primal fury, but the Ravagers' advanced weaponry was taking its toll. Brian felt every loss through his mental link, each fallen Xenoraptor a sharp pain in his mind. Commander Stone's voice crackled through the comms once more. "Johnson, we're moving the precursor ship into the atmosphere. We'll provide what air support we can, but we're flying blind here. These Ravagers have tech we've never seen before." As the massive precursor ship descended through the clouds, its presence seemed to energize the defenders. The Luminarians, communicating through gestures and mental impressions, guided Brian and his team to activate hidden defense turrets scattered throughout the surrounding jungle. Inside the structure, Dr. Voss made a breakthrough. "I've got it!" she exclaimed, her eyes alight with triumph. "The shield can be activated, but it requires an enormous amount of bioenergy, energy that only the Xenoraptors can provide." Brian's heart sank as he realized the implications. He looked out at the battle raging around them, seeing the Xenoraptors fighting valiantly against the technologically superior Ravagers. To activate the shield meant potentially sacrificing the very creatures they had come to rely on. As he wrestled with the decision, a group of Ravagers breached the outer defenses, fighting their way towards the central chamber. The human and Norcadian security officers engaged them in close-quarters combat, their teamwork and adaptability matching the invaders' superior technology. Brian knew he had to act fast. The fate of not just this hidden world, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. He closed his eyes, reaching out through his mental link to the Xenoraptors, feeling their fierce grit and unwavering loyalty. With a heavy heart, he made his choice. "Dr. Voss, prepare to activate the shield. I'm bringing the Xenoraptors in." As Brian began to recall the prehistoric predators, the Ravagers pressed their advantage. The central chamber became a chaotic battlefield, with energy weapons flashing and the air filled with the sounds of combat. The Xenoraptors streamed into the structure, their bodies humming with almost unchecked energy. As they connected to the biomechanical interfaces, the entire building seemed to come alive, pulsing with power. Brian stood at the center of it all, his mind linked with the Xenoraptors, channeling their collective energy into the ancient precursor technology. As the power built to a crescendo, he could only hope that their actions would be enough to turn the tide of battle and protect this hidden world from the Ravager threat. Brian stood at the center of the ancient structure, his mind racing as he weighed the gravity of the situation. The Xenoraptor's energy pulsed through him, a fierce primal force that both exhilarated and terrified. He knew what had to be done. "Dr. Voss," he called out, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We need to recall the majority of the Xenoraptors. It's our best chance to power up the shield." Dr. Voss nodded, her face etched with concern. "Understood, but we'll need to keep some for defense. The Ravagers are still coming." Brian closed his eyes, focusing on his mental link with the prehistoric predators. He sent out a powerful command, summoning most of the Xenoraptors back to the central chamber, while leaving a small, elite group to defend key positions around the temple. As the Xenoraptors streamed into the chamber, Dr. Voss and Vita sprang into action. They worked feverishly at the biomechanical interfaces, their fingers flying over holographic displays as they attempted to establish the crucial bioenergy link between the creatures and the precursor technology. "It's more complex than we thought," Vita said, her antennae twitching with concentration. "We need to synchronize their biorhythms with the temple's energy matrix." Outside the central chamber, the sounds of battle intensified. The human and Norcadian security forces engaged the Ravager squad that had breached the outer defenses. Energy weapons flashed in the dim corridors, and the air filled with shouts and the acrid smell of ozone. Lieutenant Kira Chen, leading the security team, used her knowledge of the temple's layout to their advantage. "Fall back to Junction 3, she ordered, her voice crisp over the comms. "Zrek, take your team and flank them from the eastern passage." The defenders may have had inferior weaponry, but their tactical prowess and the assistance of the remaining Xenoraptors gave them an edge. They used the temple's winding corridors and hidden chambers to set up ambushes, striking at the Ravagers before melting away into the shadows. In the planet's atmosphere, Commander Stone piloted the massive precursor ship with expert precision. He coordinated with Alex Chen, who was monitoring the battle from within the temple. "Alex, we've got multiple Ravager dropships inbound." Stone's voice crackled over the comms. "Can you give me targeting data?" Alex's fingers danced over the holographic displays. "Sending coordinates now, Commander. Be advised, their shields are adapting to our weapons. You'll need to vary your attack patterns." The precursor ship's ancient weaponry lashed out, destroying several Ravager vessels before they could land reinforcements. But the continuous combat was taking its toll on the ship's systems, alarms blaring as power fluctuations rippled through its hull. Suddenly, Brian felt a surge of distress through his link with the Xenoraptors. The Alpha Prime, still connected to the precursor ship's systems, was in turmoil. Its biomechanical link with the ship became erratic, threatening to disrupt both the ship's defenses and the efforts to activate the planetary shield. "Dr. Voss," Brian called out, his voice strained. "Something's wrong with the Alpha Prime. Its energy, it's destabilizing." Dr. Voss rushed to his side, her eyes widening as she analyzed the data streaming across her handheld device. "The Alpha Prime's bioenergy could be the key to jump-starting the shield," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and apprehension. "But tapping into it might permanently sever its link to the precursor ship. We could lose it entirely." As they grappled with this new complication, one of the Luminarian beings approached. It gestured urgently, its luminous eyes conveying a sense of desperate inspiration. Vieta, interpreting the being's rudimentary telepathic communication, gasped. "They have an idea," she said. "We could create a temporary psychic link between Brian, the Alpha Prime, and the planetary defense system. It might allow us to channel the necessary bioenergy without causing permanent harm to the creature." Dr. Voss nodded, her mind already racing with the possibilities. "It could work, but it would place an enormous mental strain on Brian. The risks—" Before she could finish, the temple shook violently. Alex's voice came through the comms, tense and urgent. "Multiple breaches. The Ravagers have deployed EMP devices. Our active defenses are going offline." Brian looked at Dr. Voss, his heart made. "We're out of options. Let's do it." As they prepared to implement the risky strategy, Commander Stone's voice boomed through the comms. Johnson, I'm bringing the precursor ship down next to the temple. It's our best shot at getting the Alpha Prime within range for the energy transfer. The massive ship descended from the sky, its ancient hull groaning under the strain of atmospheric entry. As it touched down, the ground trembled, and a wave of dust billowed through the temple's corridors. The Luminarians gathered around Brian, their slender forms glowing with an intense pulsating light. They began a series of intricate gestures, creating a shimmering field of energy that enveloped Brian and connected him to the temple's core systems. As Brian prepared to establish the psychic link with the Alpha Prime, the combined human-Norcadian security team formed a last line of defense around the central chamber. Lieutenant Chen barked orders, positioning her troops and the remaining Xenoraptors to create a defensive perimeter. The air crackled with tension as Brian closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind towards the Alpha Prime. He felt the creature's presence, vast and ancient, filled with a primal power that dwarfed anything he had experienced before. Suddenly, a Luminarian's eyes widened in alarm. It communicated urgently to Vita, who translated with growing horror. The Ravagers. They're deploying a planet-killer weapon. If we don't activate the shield soon, everything on the surface will be destroyed. With this dire revelation, Brian steeled himself and plunged into the psychic link. The world around him faded away as he was engulfed in a torrent of raw, unfiltered energy and information. The combined consciousness of the Alpha Prime and the ancient precursor systems flooded his mind, threatening to overwhelm him. As Brian struggled to channel the immense bioenergy, the Ravager forces converged on their position. The defenders fought with desperate valor, knowing that the fate of the entire planet now hung in the balance. Energy weapons flashed, Xenoraptors screeched, and the air filled with the sounds of battle. In the heart of the temple, surrounded by the swirling energies of an alien world, Brian Johnson stood as the linchpin of their desperate plan. The success of their mission, the survival of this hidden precursor world, and perhaps the future of the stars itself, now rested on his ability to activate the planetary shield before it was too late. The Ravagers pressed their attack. The planet-killer weapon hummed ominously, and time seemed to slow to a crawl as Brian fought to harness the power that could save them all. As Brian fought to harness the power that could save them, the world around him exploded into a maelstrom of sensations. The psychic link with the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor surged to life, flooding his consciousness with raw, primal energy. His body tensed, every muscle straining as he struggled to contain the overwhelming force coursing through him. Dr. Alara Voss watched in alarm as Brian's body began to convulse. "Vita, we need to stabilize the connection," she shouted, her fingers flying over the precursor console. "The energy flow is too erratic." Vita's antennae twitched rapidly as she worked alongside Dr. Voss. "I'm rerouting power through secondary conduits," she reported, her voice strained. "It should help distribute the load more evenly." As they worked frantically to keep Brian from being overwhelmed, the battle outside the central chamber intensified. Lieutenant Jack Harper, a grizzled human veteran with a scar running down his left cheek, barked orders to his team. "Sanchez, Kowalski, take the left flank. Zrek, I want your Norcadians covering the main entrance." The combined human-Norcadian security team moved with practiced efficiency, setting up defensive positions around the chamber. The winding corridors of the temple echoed with the sharp crack of energy weapons and the screeching of Xenoraptors as they engaged the advancing Ravager forces. Commander Marcus Stone's voice crackled over the comms. "Harper, I'm redirecting the remaining Xenoraptors to your position. Use them to fortify the choke points." "Copy that, Commander," Harper replied, his eyes scanning the battlefield. He watched as a pack of Xenoraptors bounded past, their scales gleaming in the dim light as they took up positions at key intersections. Inside the precursor ship, Alex Chen hunched over a holographic display, his eyes widening as he deciphered the ancient data streaming across the screen. "Commander Stone," he called out, "I've found something critical in the ship's databanks." Stone strode over, his face grim. "What is it, Chen?" "There's a failsafe in the planetary defense system," Alex explained rapidly. "It requires a specific genetic key to activate, a combination of precursor, Xenoraptor, and Luminarian DNA. Stone's mind raced, quickly grasping the implications. Get that information to Dr. Voss immediately. It might be our only shot at getting this shield online in time. As Alex relayed the discovery to the team in the central chamber, Dr. Voss's eyes lit up with rekindled commitment. "This could be the missing piece we need," she said, turning to the nearest Luminarian. "We need a DNA sample from one of you. Are you willing?" The Luminarian nodded, its luminous eyes conveying understanding. Dr. Voss worked swiftly, extracting a small sample and combining it with Xenoraptor genetic material. She then fed the mixture into a precursor device, watching intently as it synthesized the final component of the key. The ground shook violently, nearly throwing them off their feet. Alex's voice came through the comms, filled with urgency. "The Ravagers have activated their planet-killer weapon. We're detecting massive seismic disturbances." Outside, fissures began to open in the earth, threatening the temple's very foundation. Commander Stone made a split-second decision. "I'm activating the ship's emergency force field," he announced. "It won't hold forever, but it should buy us some time." The precursor ship hummed to life, projecting a shimmering barrier around the temple complex. Stone watched grimly as the ship's power levels began to drop, knowing he had just sacrificed their potential escape route. In the central chamber, Dr. Voss completed the genetic key. With trembling hands, she approached the main precursor console. "This is it," she breathed, inserting the key into a slot that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. The ancient machinery roared to life, lights flickering across its surface as it accepted the key. The activation sequence for the planetary shield began, drawing on the immense bioenergy still channeling through Brian and the Alpha Prime. Brian's world exploded into a kaleidoscope of images and sensations. He saw flashes of the precursor's history, their rise, their creation of the Xenoraptors, their eventual evolution into the Luminarians. The knowledge threatened to tear his mind apart, but he clung desperately to his sense of self, refusing to be lost in the flood of alien memories. A shimmering dome of energy began to form in the atmosphere, slowly expanding outward. But it wasn't fast enough. The planet-killer weapon's countdown continued, the tremors intensifying with each passing second. The Luminarians in the chamber stepped forward as one, their bodies glowing with an inner light. They formed a circle around Brian, placing their hands on the precursor console. A surge of bioenergy flowed through them, accelerating the shield's deployment but placing an enormous strain on all involved. Outside, the human Norcadian defenders found themselves with an unexpected advantage as the expanding energy field began to affect the Ravagers' advanced weaponry. Lieutenant Harper seized the opportunity, leading a counterattack that drove the enemy back from the central chamber. In orbit, Ravager ships began to lose power, drifting helplessly as the planetary shield expanded into space. On the ground, the remaining Ravager forces found themselves suddenly on equal footing with their opponents as their technological edge disappeared. The shield snapped into place mere seconds before the planet-killer weapon detonated. The massive explosion blossomed against the energy barrier, its destructive force harmlessly dissipated into the void of space. As the immediate threat passed, Brian collapsed to the floor, his pupils dilating from the psychic link and the strain of channeling such enormous energies. The Alpha Prime, still connected to the precursor ship, let out a low, pained growl before slumping in its biomechanical cradle. Dr. Voss and Vita rushed to Brian's side, medical scanners whirring as they assessed his condition. "He's alive," Dr. Voss announced, relief evident in her voice. "But his neural patterns are highly erratic. We need to stabilize him quickly." As the team worked to treat Brian and the Alpha Prime, Commander Stone's voice came through the comms, tight with controlled emotion. "The shield is holding. The planet-killer threat has been neutralized. Well done, everyone." Lieutenant Harper entered the chamber, his uniform scorched and torn but his eyes blazing with triumph. "The remaining Ravager forces are in full retreat," he reported. "We're beginning mop-up operations now." The immediate crisis had passed, but as the dust settled, new challenges loomed on the horizon. The activation of the planetary shield had not only saved this hidden precursor world, but had also announced its presence to the wider galaxy. As Commander Stone began coordinating with the Luminarians to assess the damage and secure the temple, the team knew that their adventure was far from finished. The precursor legacy they had uncovered would need to be protected, its ancient knowledge deciphered. And somewhere out in the vastness of space, the remnants of the Ravager fleet were undoubtedly regrouping, planning their next move. The battle for this world might have been won, but a new chapter in the story of the galaxy was just beginning to unfold. The activation of the planetary shield had marked a turning point, but new challenges quickly emerged to test their tenacity. As the dust settled, Brian Johnson stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. Dr. Alara Voss and Vita hovered over him, medical scanners whirring as they assessed his condition. "Easy there, Brian," Dr. Voss said softly, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You've been through quite an ordeal." Brian blinked, his vision swimming with after-images of alien landscapes and strange geometric patterns. I can still feel it," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "The Alpha Prime, the precursors, it's all still there, just beneath the surface." Vita's antennae twitched with concern. "The psychic link appears to have left residual effects," she observed, studying the readouts on her scanner. "Your neural patterns show significant alterations." As Brian slowly regained his bearings, the team around him sprang into action. Commander Marcus Stone's voice crackled over the comms, issuing rapid-fire orders to secure the temple complex. "Lieutenant Harper, I want a full sweep of the area," Stone commanded. "Neutralize any remaining Ravager forces and secure their technology. We can't afford to leave anything to chance." "Copy that, Commander," Harper replied, his voice tight with focus. "I've got teams moving out now. We'll make sure every nook and cranny is clear." Outside the central chamber, the sounds of the mopping-up operation echoed through the ancient corridors. Energy weapons discharged in sporadic bursts, accompanied by the guttural growls of xenoraptors as they assisted in flushing out the last pockets of Ravager resistance. Alex Chen's voice suddenly cut through the chatter, his tone urgent. "Commander Stone, I've got something you need to see. The ship's long-range sensors are picking up a massive energy signature approaching the system." Stone's expression hardened as he studied the holographic display Chen had transmitted. "Ravager reinforcements," he said grimly. "They must have had a backup plan in case the planet killer failed." The news sent a ripple of tension through the team. They had barely survived the first Ravager assault, and now an even greater threat loomed on the horizon. As the implications of this new development sank in, a commotion near the precursor ship's lower decks drew their attention. A man in a lab coat emerged, his eyes wide with excitement despite the grim situation. "Commander Stone," he called out, striding purposefully towards the group. "Dr. Marcus Reinhardt, xenobiology. I've made a discovery that could change everything." Stone raised an eyebrow, motioning for the scientist to continue. Reinhardt spoke rapidly, his words tumbling out in a rush. "While studying the ship's biological systems, I stumbled upon references to a network of subterranean tunnels. They appear to be part of an emergency evacuation system created by the precursors." The revelation sparked a flurry of activity. Stone immediately recognized both the strategic value and the potential risk posed by these tunnels. "Harper," he barked into his comm unit, "I'm sending you coordinates. Take a team and secure these tunnels. They could be our ace in the hole or our Achilles heel." As Harper acknowledged the order and moved out with a select group of human and Norcadian troops, Brian pushed himself to his feet. The world spun for a moment, but as he steadied himself, he became aware of a new clarity in his perception. "The xenoraptors," he said, his voice stronger now. "I can sense them, their thoughts, their instincts. It's like I'm connected to them on a fundamental level." Dr. Voss exchanged a glance with Vita. "The psychic link must have enhanced your connection," she mused. "This could be invaluable for coordinating our defenses." Stone nodded, quickly grasping the tactical advantages this development offered. "Brian, I need you to work with the xenoraptors. Use this connection to organize patrols and strengthen our perimeter." As Brian moved to comply, reaching out with his mind to the pack of xenoraptors prowling the temple grounds, the Luminarians approached. Their ethereal forms seemed to shimmer with an inner light as they addressed the team. "We owe you a great debt," one of them said, its voice resonating in their minds. "The activation of the shield has preserved our world. We offer our knowledge and assistance in return. Stone inclined his head in acknowledgement. We're grateful for your help. We'll need every advantage we can get against the incoming Ravager fleet. With that, the Luminarians began the painstaking process of accessing and translating the vast precursor database housed within the temple. As they worked, Dr. Voss and Vita turned their attention to the precursor technology that surrounded them. These systems are incredible, Vita breathed, her eyes wide as she interfaced with a console. There's so much more here than just defensive capabilities. Look at this. Manufacturing facilities, energy production systems, even terraforming technology. Dr. Voss nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. If we can get these systems operational, we might stand a chance against the Ravagers, but we're working against the clock here. As if to underscore her words, Alex Chen's voice came through the comms once more. Commander, I've got more bad news. The planetary shield is blocking all outgoing communications. We can't send a distress signal to Earth or the Norcadian homeworld. The weight of isolation settled over the team. They were truly on their own, with only their wits and the ancient technology at their disposal to face the coming storm. Stone's expression resolute in willpower. Then we make do with what we have. Chen, I want you working on integrating the ship's systems with the planetary defenses. Dr. Reinhardt, see what you can learn about the local ecosystem. If we can use it to our advantage, do it. As the team dispersed to their assigned tasks, Brian found himself standing before the immense form of the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor. The creature's eyes, filled with an alien intelligence, met his own. In that moment, a spark of understanding passed between them. Brian closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind. He felt the Alpha Prime's consciousness brush against his own, and suddenly, a new world of possibilities opened up before him. The creature's bioelectric abilities, its deep connection to the planet itself, all of it became clear. Opening his eyes, Brian turned to Stone, a glimmer of hope in his expression. Commander, he said, his voice steady with newfound purpose, I think I've found a way to even the odds against the Ravagers. As Brian began to explain his discovery, the team redoubled their efforts to prepare for the coming battle. The ancient temple hummed with activity, precursor technology slowly coming to life under their guidance. Outside, the planetary shield shimmered against the backdrop of space, a fragile barrier between them and the approaching Ravager armada. Time was running out, but within the temple's weathered walls, a fusion of human ingenuity, alien biology, and precursor technology was taking shape. A force that would soon be put to the ultimate test. With renewed purpose, Brian turned to address the team. Commander Stone, I believe I've found a way to amplify our defensive capabilities, he said, his voice steady with newfound confidence. The Alpha Prime has shown me that the Xenoraptors possess a latent ability to generate localized electromagnetic pulses. If we can harness this power, it could be a game changer against the Ravagers' advanced tech. Stone's eyes narrowed, considering the implications. Excellent work, Brian. Start training a select group of Xenoraptors immediately. We'll need every advantage we can get. As Brian moved to begin his work with the Xenoraptors, Dr. Alara Voss called out from across the chamber. Commander, you need to see this. The team converged on Dr. Voss and Vita, who were hunched over a newly uncovered section of the precursor console. As they watched, a hidden panel slid open, revealing a pulsing crystalline structure. It's some kind of dormant AI system, Vita explained, her antennae twitching with excitement. If we can reactivate it, it might provide crucial information about the planet's defenses. Stone nodded grimly. Do it. We need all the help we can get. As Dr. Voss and Vita worked to bring the ancient AI online, Lieutenant Harper's voice crackled over the comms. Commander, my team has detected a series of underground hangars. Permission to investigate? Granted, Stone replied, but proceed with caution. We don't know what you'll find down there. Harper acknowledged the order and led his team into the depths of the temple complex. The tunnels twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the planet's crust. After what felt like hours of careful exploration, they emerged into a vast, cavernous space. Holy shit, Harper breathed, his voice filled with awe. The hangar stretched out before them, filled with rows upon rows of sleek, otherworldly vehicles and weapons. "Commander, you're not going to believe what we found." Back in the main chamber, Dr. Reinhardt burst in, his face flushed with excitement. "Commander Stone, I've been working with the Luminarians, and we've made a remarkable discovery. There's a network of geothermal vents beneath the surface. If we can harness that energy, we could significantly boost our defensive capabilities." Stone's mind raced, trying to process the flood of new information and opportunities. He turned to Alex Chen, who was still interfacing with the precursor ship's systems. "Chen, what's our status on communications?" Chen's fingers flew over the holographic interface. "I've managed to partially repair the long-range array. We can't break through the shield to contact Earth or Norcadia, but I've established a network to monitor the Ravager fleet's movements and communications." As the team worked feverishly to prepare their defenses, a new alert blared from Chen's console. "Commander, we've got a problem. I'm detecting Ravager activity in the planet's polar regions. It looks like they've established a hidden base and are launching guerrilla attacks on our supply lines." Stone's mind focused. "Harper, I need you to divert some of your forces to counter this new threat. We can't afford to lose our supply lines." "Copy that, Commander," Harper replied, his voice tight with focus. Amidst the flurry of activity, Brian's eyes suddenly went wide. He stumbled, catching himself on a nearby console as a flood of alien memories cascaded through his mind. "Brian, are you all right?" Dr. Voss asked, concern etched on her face. He nodded, blinking rapidly as he processed the new information. I remember something. From the Alpha Prime's memories. There's a series of orbital defense platforms. If we can reactivate them, they could be our first line of defense against the Ravager fleet." Stone's eyes lit up at this news. "Excellent work, Brian. Take a team and see what you can do to get those platforms online." As Brian prepared for his mission, Dr. Voss and Vida made another breakthrough with the precursor database. "Commander," Vida called out, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "We've found evidence of a massive subterranean complex housing a terraforming engine. It's incredibly powerful, potentially capable of manipulating the planet's environment on a massive scale." Dr. Voss continued, her expression grave. "We might be able to repurpose it as a weapon against the Ravagers, but the risks are enormous. Using it could cause catastrophic damage to the planet's ecosystem." Stone absorbed this information, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. Each new discovery brought with it both opportunity and danger, and time was running out. In the underground tunnels, Harper's team made contact with something unexpected. "Commander?" Harper's voice came through, tinged with wonder and wariness. "We've encountered a colony of evolved creatures down here. They seem to be descendants of the original precursor experiments. They have unique abilities adapted for subterranean life. If we can communicate with them, they could be powerful allies." As the team raced to implement their various strategies, the Luminarians approached Commander Stone, their ethereal forms shimmering with urgency. "We have accessed our ancestral memories," one of them intoned, its voice resonating in Stone's mind. "There is a precursor space station hidden in a nearby asteroid field. If reached and reactivated, it could provide additional resources for the planet's defense." Stone nodded, his mind already calculating the risks and potential rewards of such a mission. "Thank you. We'll look into it immediately." Just then, Chen's voice cut through the air, tense and urgent. "Commander, the Ravager fleet has entered the outer reaches of the star system. We're out of time." Stone stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by his team and their alien allies. The weight of their situation pressed down on him as he considered their options. They could focus on bolstering the planet's defenses or attempt a preemptive strike using their newly discovered precursor technologies. Each choice carried significant risks and potential rewards. As he prepared to make his decision, Stone looked at the determined faces around him. Human, Norcadian, Xenoraptor, and Luminarian. They stood united, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fate of this hidden precursor world, and perhaps the balance of power in the galaxy, hung in the balance. Stone took a deep breath, his mind made up. "All right, people. This is what we're going to do." "Do," Stone said, his voice resonating with authority. We're going to hit them from every angle we've got. The commander turned to address his team, each member standing at attention, ready for their orders. Brian, take a team to those orbital defense platforms. Get them online and ready to fire. Dr. Voss, Vita, I want that precursor AI fully integrated into our systems. Lieutenant Harper, secure those underground tunnels and see if you can make some new friends down there. As the team dispersed to their assigned tasks, Stone continued. Dr. Reinhardt, work with the Luminarians on those geothermal converters. Chen, keep decrypting those Ravager communications. We need every scrap of intel we can get. Brian nodded, his mind already reaching out to the Xenoraptors. I'll take a group of them with me to the platforms. Their abilities might come in handy up there. Within minutes, Brian and his team were aboard a sleek precursor shuttle, its controls responding to his touch, as if they were an extension of his own body. The craft hummed to life, lifting off from the ancient hangar and streaking through the planet's atmosphere. As they approached the first orbital platform, Brian's breath caught in his throat. The massive structure loomed before them, its surface pitted and scarred by millennia of neglect. All right, team, he said, guiding the shuttle towards a docking port. Let's see what we're working with. Back at the temple, Dr. Voss and Vita huddled over the pulsing, crystalline structure of the precursor AI. Initiating startup sequence, Vita announced, her antenna twitching with anticipation. The crystal flared to life, holographic displays blossoming around them. Hello, a disembodied voice echoed through the chamber. I am Sentinel. How may I assist you? Dr. Voss leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Sentinel, we need your help to defend this planet against an incoming hostile force. As Sentinel processed this information, Lieutenant Harper led his team deeper into the underground tunnel network. The air grew thick and humid as they descended, their headlamps cutting through the darkness. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the tunnel. Harper raised his hand, signaling his team to halt. We've got company, he whispered, his eyes scanning the shadows. A figure emerged from the darkness, its body sleek and adapted for subterranean life. Its eyes, large and sensitive, blinked in the light of their headlamps. Harper slowly lowered his weapon, holding out an empty hand in a gesture of peace. We're not here to hurt you, he said softly, mimicking a non-threatening posture. We're here because we all face a common enemy. The creature tilted its head, studying Harper with intelligent eyes. After a tense moment, it made a series of clicking sounds, and more of its kind emerged from the shadows. Meanwhile, Dr. Reinhardt and a group of Luminarians worked feverishly to install the geothermal converters. The caverns rumbled ominously as they tapped into the planet's core energy. Power levels are rising, Reinhardt reported, his voice tense with concentration. But we're seeing some seismic activity. We'll need to monitor this closely. As the team raced against time, Alex Chen's voice cut through the comms. Commander, I've broken through another layer of Ravager encryption. You're not going to like this. Stone's eyebrows furrowed. What have you got, Chen? The Ravager fleet is larger than we thought, Chen replied, his voice grim. And they're being led by someone called Drakthor. From what I can gather, he's not known for his mercy. Stone absorbed this information, his mind already formulating new strategies. Understood. Keep digging, Chen. We need every advantage we can get. In orbit, Brian and his team had made progress on the defense platforms. The ancient weapons hummed to life, their energy readings off the charts. Commander, Brian reported, we've got good news and bad news. The good news is these platforms pack one hell of a punch. The bad news is they're not at full power yet. We're working on it. As the various teams continued their preparations, a new alert blared through the command center. Commander, Chen called out, his voice urgent. We've got multiple unidentified ships entering the system. They're not Ravagers, but they're heading straight for us. Stone's eyes narrowed. The situation was becoming more complex by the minute. Hail them, he ordered. Let's see what we're dealing with. As the first transmission came through, Stone steeled himself. The battle for this hidden precursor world was about to begin, and the stakes couldn't be higher. With the Ravager fleet approaching, led by the ruthless Drakthor, and now these new unknown players entering the fray, Stone knew that every decision he made from this point on could mean the difference between victory and annihilation. Annihilation. With a deep breath, Stone activated the command center's holographic display, bringing up a real-time map of the system. "All teams, report in," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Brian's voice crackled through the comm system. "Commander, we've got 2 of the 3 orbital platforms online. They're operational, but the third is giving us trouble. Severe structural damage. We're working on it, but it's a weak spot in our defenses." Stone nodded grimly. "Understood. Do what you can. Chen, what's the status on those unidentified ships?" Chen's fingers flew over his console. "Sir, I've managed to decrypt more of the Ravager communications. It's not good. The fleet is massive, led by someone called Drakthor. But I've also intercepted their attack formation plans. We can use this." "Excellent work, Chen. Send that data to all team leaders immediately." Stone turned to address the rest of the command center. "Listen up, people. We're initiating our defense plan now. Brian, deploy your Xenoraptor EMP strike force to these key locations." He highlighted several points on the holographic map. "Be ready to repel any landing attempts." As Brian acknowledged the order, Dr. Voss approached, her eyes bright with excitement. "Commander, we've fully integrated Sentinel into our defense network. It's already optimizing our shield distribution." No sooner had she spoken than Sentinel's artificial voice resonated through the chamber. "Alert! Anomalies detected in shield integrity. Prolonged assault may lead to localized failures." Stone's fist tight. "Dr. Voss, work with Sentinel to strengthen those weak points. We can't afford any breaches." A tremor shook the complex, causing everyone to stumble. Dr. Reinhardt's worried face appeared on a nearby screen. "Commander, the geothermal system is online, but it's causing significant seismic activity. I'm working on regulating the output, but it's touch and go." "Do what you can, Doctor. We need that power," Stone replied, steadying himself against a console. Lieutenant Harper's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, good news from the tunnels. We've uncovered a cache of functional precursor weapons. I'm training a mixed unit to use them now. We'll be ready to defend the temple complex." As Stone processed this information, another alert blared. Chen's eyes widened as he read the incoming data. "Commander, the precursor space station is online. They've detected a second Ravager fleet approaching from a different vector." Stone's mind raced, quickly reassessing their strategy. "Chen, coordinate with the station. We need constant updates on both fleets' positions." He turned to the holographic display, adjusting their defensive formations to account for the new threat. Suddenly, the room filled with a piercing whine as the planetary shield flared brightly. "Ravager missiles incoming!" Chen shouted. "The defense platforms are engaging, but some are breaking through." Stone watched as points of light impacted the shield, causing ripples of energy to cascade across its surface. "Status report on the shield?" Sentinel's voice responded. "Shield integrity at 92% and falling. Localized failures imminent if assault continues at current intensity." "Sir," Chen interjected, "Ravager fleet is splitting. A significant force is moving to engage the precursor space station." Stone's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to divide our attention. Chen, get me Korg." Korg's gruff voice filled the command center. "Korg here. We've engaged the Ravager splinter group in the polar regions. It's a tough fight, but we're holding our own." As if on cue, a massive tremor shook the complex. Alarms blared as data streamed across the holographic display. "Korg, report!" Stone demanded. The Ravagers triggered some kind of dead man switch. Massive glacial collapse. "We've got tidal waves heading for the coastal regions." Stone's mind whirled, trying to prioritize the mounting crises. "Dr. Reinhardt, divert some of that geothermal energy to the coastal defense systems. Harper, get your team to the high ground and prepare for potential flooding." As the defenders scrambled to address the new threat, Brian's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, Ravager dropships attempting to land near Shield Generator Site 3. Engaging with Xenoraptor EMP strike force now." Stone watched the tactical display as Brian's team engaged the dropships. Several enemy craft fell from the sky, disabled by the Xenoraptor's electromagnetic pulses. But the victory was short-lived. "Sir," Brian reported, his voice strained. The EMP strikes are effective, but they're taking a heavy toll on the Xenoraptors. I don't know how many more waves we can repel like this. Stone's gaze swept over the command center, taking in the grim faces of his team. The battle was fully joined on all fronts, space, sky, and ground. Their hastily prepared defenses were straining under the Ravager assault, and Drak Thor's flagship loomed ominously in the tactical display, overseeing the invasion. As alarms blared and reports flooded in from all sides, Stone made a decision. Chen, prep the precursor ship for combat. Interface its weapons with our defense network. Chen's eyes widened. Sir, that's incredibly risky. We barely understand its systems, and it's our only potential escape vehicle. Stone's expression hardened. We don't have a choice. We need the firepower, and we're not going anywhere if we can't hold this planet. As Chen rushed to comply, Stone turned back to the holographic display. The orbital defense platforms fired, their energy weapons cutting brilliant swaths through the planet's atmosphere. The planetary shield flared again and again as it deflected the Ravager barrage. On the ground, Harper's mixed-species defense force took up positions around the temple complex, precursor weapons at the ready. In orbit, Brian and his team worked feverishly to bring the third defense platform online, even as they coordinated the space battle. Stone watched as the Ravager fleet closed in, their vast numbers seeming to blot out the stars. He knew that the next few hours would determine not just their fate, but that of the entire galaxy. As Drak Thor's flagship moved into position, Stone steeled himself for the battle ahead. All units, he commanded, his voice carrying to every defender across the planet and in orbit, prepare for full engagement. This is where we hold the line. Line. Stone's voice rang out, steady and resolute, as the command center erupted into a flurry of activity. No sooner had the words left his mouth than the planetary shield flared brilliantly, a dazzling display of energy rippling across its surface. Alarms blared as Chen's fingers flew over his console. Commander, we've got multiple breaches, Chen shouted, his eyes darting across the incoming data. Ravager forces are exploiting the gaps. Stone's eyes sharp as he studied the holographic display. The Ravager fleet's attack pattern suddenly crystallized before him. They're concentrating fire on specific segments, he muttered. Brian, are you seeing this? Brian's voice crackled through the comm, tinged with realization. Affirmative, sir. Drak Thor's trying to create a large enough breach for a mass landing. I'm coordinating with Sentinel now to predict their next target. As Brian spoke, the orbital defense platforms pivoted, their energy weapons lancing out to reinforce the weakening areas of the shield. The constant barrage of Ravager weaponry created a deadly light show in the planet's atmosphere. On the ground, Lieutenant Harper's voice cut through the chaos. Commander, we've got hostiles planetside. The first wave slipped through before we could seal the gaps. Stone's mind raced, calculating their options. Harper, engage and contain. Use the tunnels to your advantage. Roger that, Harper replied, his voice steady despite the sounds of weapons fire in the background. We're initiating hit-and-run tactics now. These precursor weapons are doing a number on their armor, but there's just so damn many of them. As Harper's team engaged the Ravager ground forces, a violent tremor shook the command center. Reinhardt's face appeared on a nearby screen, his expression grim. Commander, the increased power demand is causing dangerous fluctuations in the planet's tectonic stability, Reinhardt reported, sweat beading on his forehead. I'm doing everything I can to modulate the output, but we're walking a razor's edge here. Stone nodded, his mind already moving to the next crisis. Work with the Luminarians, Doctor. Use their connection to the planet to fine-tune the system. As Reinhardt acknowledged the order, a new alert flashed across the main display. Chen's eyes widened as he processed the incoming data. Sir, the precursor space station, it's gone, Chen exclaimed, disbelief evident in his voice. Explain, Stone demanded, his gaze snapping to the tactical display. Chen's fingers danced across his console. It seems Zara initiated some kind of precursor protocol. The station's phased out of normal spacetime. It's safe from the Ravagers, but we've lost our long-range scanning capabilities, Stone finished, the implications clear. They were now blind to the movements of the second Ravager fleet. Before Stone could formulate a new strategy, Alex Chen's voice cut through the comm channel, urgent and alarmed. "Commander, I've detected something on the precursor ship's sensors. The Ravagers are assembling some kind of superweapon in orbit. I'm calling it Planet Breaker. It looks like it can generate a gravitational pulse strong enough to shatter the planet's crust." Stone's blood ran cold as he absorbed this new information. The stakes had just risen exponentially. He turned to the tactical display, his mind racing through potential countermoves. "Brian, I need you to redirect one of the orbital platforms to target that weapons assembly area," Stone ordered, his voice taut with tension. "Sir, that'll leave a significant gap in our defenses," Brian warned, even as he began the reallocation process. "I know, but we don't have a choice. If that weapon comes online, nothing else will matter." As Brian complied, the tactical display shifted, revealing a new vulnerability in their defensive line. Stone watched, his heart pounding, as Drakthor's forces quickly noticed and moved to exploit the gap. "Ravager dropships incoming!" Brian's voice rang out, strained with effort. "Deploying Xenoraptor EMP strike force now!" The display lit up as Brian's team engaged the descending Ravager ships. Brilliant flashes marked successful EMP strikes, sending enemy craft plummeting from the sky. But for every dropship disabled, more seemed to take its place. "Commander, the Xenoraptors are pushing themselves to the limit," Brian reported, his voice tight with shared pain. "We've already lost several to exhaustion. I don't know how much longer we can keep this up." As if the situation wasn't dire enough, Korg's gruff voice cut through the comm channel. "Stone, we've got a situation in the polar region. The glacial collapse has revealed another precursor installation. Looks like it controls the planet's climate. Could be a game changer, but if the Ravagers get their hands on it..." Stone's mind whirled, trying to process and prioritize the mounting crises. The battle raged on multiple fronts: space, sky, and ground, with their hastily prepared defenses straining under the relentless Ravager assault. Suddenly, the tactical display erupted with new activity. The opportunistic alien fleet that had entered the system earlier was on the move, launching a surprise attack on the Ravagers' rear lines. "Sir, the majority of the alien ships are engaging the Ravagers," Chen reported, a glimmer of hope in his voice. "It's thrown their fleet into disarray." Stone saw the opportunity and seized it without hesitation. "Alex, take the precursor ship and engage Drakthor's flagship directly. Let's see what that ancient technology can really do." As Alex acknowledged the order, the precursor ship surged forward, its forgotten technologies blazing to life. The massive vessel closed in on Drakthor's flagship, ancient weapon systems activating for the first time in millennia. But even as a spark of hope ignited in Stone's chest, a new complication arose. Brian's voice came through the comm, filled with a mix of awe and apprehension. "Commander, the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor, it's waking up. Its connection to the ship is intensifying. I can feel it through the psychic link. It's powerful, sir, but I don't know if we can control it." Stone watched the battle unfold on the tactical display, the fate of the hidden precursor world hanging in the balance. The defenders fought on, their resources stretched to the breaking point, as the awakening of an ancient power threatened to tip the scales, for better or worse. Stone watched the battle unfold on the tactical display, the fate of the hidden precursor world hanging in the balance. The defenders fought on, their resources stretched to the breaking point, as the awakening of an ancient power threatened to tip the scales, for better or worse. Suddenly, the command center erupted with a surge of energy. Alarms blared as the precursor ship's systems lit up like a supernova. "Commander!" Alex Chen's voice crackled through the comm. "The Alpha Prime's connection to the ship. It's intensifying beyond anything we've seen. The energy output is off the charts." Stone's eyes widened as he watched the precursor vessel surge forward, its ancient weapons blazing to life with newfound power. The ship closed in on Drakthor's flagship, energy beams lancing out and carving through the Ravager's defenses. "Alex, press the advantage," Stone ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Brian, I need you to strengthen your link with the Alpha Prime. We need to understand what's happening." Brian Johnson's face appeared on the tactical display, his features strained with concentration. I'm on it, sir. But this is unlike anything I've experienced before. As Brian deepened his connection with the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor, his eyes suddenly went wide. Information flooded his mind, tactical data, precursor knowledge, and battle strategies beyond his wildest imagination. Commander, Brian gasped, his voice filled with awe. I can see it all. The orbital platforms. I know how to control them with precision we've never had before. Stone nodded sharply. Do it, Brian. Coordinate with Alex and take the fight to the Ravagers. As Brian's enhanced control of the orbital defense platforms turned the tide in space, a new crisis erupted on the ground. Lieutenant Harper's voice cut through the comm channel, urgent and strained. Commander, we've got a problem. The Ravagers are using some kind of advanced tunneling vehicles. They're bypassing our lines and popping up behind us. Stone's mind raced, formulating a new strategy on the fly. Harper, deploy the tunnelers, collapse their routes and set up ambushes. We'll turn their own tactic against them. As Harper acknowledged the order, the command center shook violently. Dr. Reinhardt's face appeared on a nearby screen, his expression grim. Commander, the planet's crust is becoming dangerously unstable, Reinhardt reported, his voice tight with concern. The combination of our power system and the battle, we're on the verge of a catastrophic tectonic event. Stone's teeth gritted. Options, Doctor? I'm working on a plan to use controlled energy releases, Reinhardt replied. It's risky, but it might prevent a global disaster. Before Stone could respond, Korg's gruff voice cut through the chaos. Stone, we've activated the climate control facility in the polar region. We're using it to hinder Ravager landings and provide cover for our forces. As Stone processed this new information, a priority alert flashed across the main display. Zara's face appeared, her expression urgent. Commander, the space station is beginning to reintegrate into normal space-time, she reported. But the process is unstable. We need assistance to complete the reintegration safely. Stone's mind whirled, weighing the potential strategic advantage of the station against the immediate needs of the planetary defense. Before he could make a decision, Alex Chen's voice cut through the comm channel. Sir, I've discovered a weakness in the Ravager's planet breaker weapon, Alex reported, his voice tight with excitement. If we can hit it in the right spot with one of the orbital platforms, we might be able to take it out before it's operational. Stone's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The opportunity was there, but it would leave a section of the planetary shield exposed. As if reading his thoughts, Brian's voice came through, strained but determined. Commander, I can redirect the Xenoraptor EMP strike force to cover the gap, he said. But sir, they're already at their limits. I don't know how much more they can take. As Stone weighed his options, a new face appeared on the command center's screens. A woman with sharp features and determined eyes addressed him directly. Commander Stone, I'm Dr. Elena Volkov, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. I've been studying the Xenoraptors, and I believe I can use precursor medical technology to enhance their bioelectric abilities. It could keep them in the fight, but there may be unforeseen consequences. Stone's gaze swept over the tactical display, taking in the multiple fronts of the battle. In orbit, Alex Chen pressed the attack against Drakthor's flagship with the newly empowered precursor ship. On the ground, Harper's forces engaged in a desperate struggle to hold the temple complex against Ravager elite troops. And all around the planet, the very elements seemed to be turning against them, as Korg's use of the climate control facility caused rapid, unpredictable weather shifts. As Commander Stone prepared to make a series of decisions that could alter the course of the battle, a new complication arose. Captain Zorn of the Krax Collective, leader of the opportunistic alien fleet that had joined their side, appeared on the main screen. Commander Stone, Zorn said, his alien features set in a hard expression. My fleet has aided your cause, but we require assurances. We demand access to precursor technology in exchange for our continued support. Stone's mind raced, analyzing the complex web of challenges before him. The fate of the hidden precursor world, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. As Thor's forces prepared for what they believed would be their final push, Stone knew that his next moves would determine whether humanity and its allies would stand or fall in the face of the Ravager onslaught. As Commander Stone weighed his options, Brian Johnson's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and filled with a newfound certainty. "Commander, I've uncovered something critical," Brian said, his eyes unfocused as he processed the information flooding his mind. "The planet has a hidden failsafe system. It's our last resort, but it might be our only chance." Stone's eyes narrowed, immediately grasping the potential significance. "Explain, Brian, quickly." "It's a network of precursor devices buried in the planet's crust," Brian replied, his words tumbling out rapidly. "When activated, they generate an energy field that can neutralize all non-precursor tech in the vicinity. But sir, I need to reach the central control node beneath the temple complex to activate it." Stone didn't hesitate. "Do it. Harper, assemble a team and get Brian to that control node. Use the tunnelers to navigate the underground passages." "Aye, sir." Harper's voice crackled through the comm. "We're on it." As Harper's team escorted Brian into the depths of the temple complex, Alex Chen's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim but determined. "Commander, the precursor ship's systems are reaching critical levels," Chen reported. "I'm initiating a final push against Thor's flagship." Stone nodded sharply. "Make it count, Alex." Chen's teeth clenched as he input a series of commands. The ancient precursor vessel surged forward, its weapons blazing as it closed in on Thor's command center. In a daring move that left even the seasoned commander speechless, Chen aimed the ship directly at the Ravager flagship. The two massive vessels collided in a spectacular display of destructive force. Metal screamed and energy discharges lit up the space around them as they became locked in a deadly embrace high above the planet's surface. On the ground, the situation was no less chaotic. Harper led his team through twisting underground passages, the tunnelers using their natural abilities to collapse tunnels behind them and forge new paths ahead. The sounds of battle echoed through the stone corridors, growing louder as they approached the lower levels of the temple. "Contact!" Harper shouted as they rounded a corner, coming face to face with a squad of Ravager troops. The close confines of the tunnel erupted in a furious exchange of weapons fire and hand-to-hand combat. A tunneler ally let out a piercing shriek, its claws tearing through Ravager armor. Harper ducked under a Ravager's swinging blade, bringing his rifle up and firing point-blank into the alien's chest. The air filled with the acrid smell of ozone and the metallic tang of blood. "Push through," Harper ordered, his voice strained with effort. "We need to get Brian to that control node." As they fought their way deeper into the complex, the very ground beneath their feet began to shake. Dr. Reinhardt's voice came through the comm, tense but controlled. "Initiating controlled energy releases now," he reported. "Brace for seismic activity." The tunnel walls groaned and dust rained down as a series of powerful tremors rocked the planet. Harper's team stumbled, using the walls for support as they pressed on. In the polar regions, Korg's gruff voice cut through the din. "Stone, the climate control facility is malfunctioning. We've got superstorms forming across the planet. We're shutting it down before it does more harm than good." As if in response to Korg's warning, a deafening crack of thunder reverberated through the tunnels, followed by the distant roar of wind. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Dr. Elena Volkov completed her risky procedure on the remaining Xenoraptors. The enhanced creatures let out ear-splitting shrieks as they charged into battle, their amplified EMP abilities wreaking havoc on Ravager technology. Harper's team finally reached the chamber housing the central control node, only to find it heavily guarded. A towering figure stepped forward, cybernetic enhancements glinting in the dim light. "Vex Core!" Harper spat, recognizing Thor's second-in-command. The enhanced warrior's eyes gleamed with malice. "You're too late, humans. This world will fall, and its secrets will belong to the Ravagers." Harper raised his weapon. "Not if we have anything to say about it." The chamber erupted in chaos as Harper's team engaged Vexcore and his elite guard. Brian Johnson ducked and weaved through the melee, making his way to the control node. As Brian interfaced with the ancient technology, he felt the presence of the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor guiding his actions. Complex symbols and diagrams flashed through his mind as he began the activation sequence. Suddenly, Brian's eyes widened with realization. "The system needs more power," he shouted over the sounds of battle. "I need to link with the enhanced Xenoraptors." Closing his eyes, Brian reached out with his mind, establishing a telepathic connection with the supercharged creatures across the battlefield. He felt their raw power, their heightened aggression, and channeled it all into the failsafe system. Energy crackled around Brian as the network of precursor devices began to power up. The air itself seemed to thicken, charged with potential. In orbit, Ravager ships began to list and drift, their systems failing as the energy field expanded. On the ground, Ravager weapons fell silent, their advanced technology rendered useless. But the activation had unforeseen consequences. Parts of the planetary shield flickered and died, and several orbital defense platforms went dark. Commander Stone's voice cut through the comm channel, tense but controlled. "All units, be advised. We're losing some of our precursor-based defenses. Adjust tactics accordingly." As the fail-safe system reached full power, Brian Johnson opened his eyes, his body trembling with the effort of channeling so much energy. A blinding pulse erupted from the planet's surface, expanding rapidly into space. The pulse washed over friend and foe alike, its effects yet unknown. In that moment of uncertainty, defenders and invaders alike held their breath, knowing that the fate of the hidden precursor world hung in the balance. Balance. The pulse expanded rapidly, engulfing the entire battlefield in its blinding radiance. As the light faded, an eerie silence fell over the planet. For a moment, both defenders and invaders held their breath, waiting to see the full extent of the failsafe system's effects. The silence was shattered by a cacophony of alarms and warnings. Across the orbital battlefield, Ravager ships began to drift aimlessly, their advanced systems failing catastrophically. On the planet's surface, Ravager weapons fell silent, and their vehicles ground to a halt. Commander Stone's voice crackled through the comm channel, tense but controlled. "All units, be advised. We're losing some of our precursor-based defenses. Adjust tactics accordingly." As if to punctuate his words, sections of the planetary shield flickered and died. The orbital defense platforms went dark, leaving the planet vulnerable to the disabled but still numerous Ravager fleet. In orbit, the collision between the precursor ship and Drakthor's flagship reached its explosive conclusion. A blinding flash lit up the sky, followed by a shockwave that rippled through space. Moments before the detonation, Alex Chen and his skeleton crew managed to reach the escape pods. "Brace for impact," Chen shouted as their pod jettisoned from the doomed vessel. The small craft tumbled through space, buffeted by debris from the explosion. As they began their descent towards the planet's surface, Chen watched in awe as the disabled Ravager ships collided with each other, creating a dangerous field of debris in low orbit. On the ground, the scene was no less chaotic. In the chamber housing the central control node, Brian Johnson collapsed, his body racked with tremors from the strain of channeling the massive bioelectric energy required to activate the failsafe system. Lieutenant Jack Harper barked orders to his team. "Form a perimeter around Johnson, now!" The soldiers quickly moved into position, their weapons at the ready. Across the chamber, Vexicor and his Ravager elite troops stood in stunned silence as their advanced weapons sputtered and died. The cybernetically enhanced warrior's eyes narrowed with fury. "You think this will stop us?" Vexicor snarled. He reached behind his back, drawing a wickedly curved blade. "We'll tear you apart with our bare hands if we must." With a roar, Vexicor charged forward, his troops following close behind. Harper's team opened fire with their backup weapons, but the Ravagers pressed on, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Outside the temple complex, Dr. Elena Volkov watched in horror as her enhanced Xenoraptors began to rampage across the battlefield. The creatures, their bioelectric abilities temporarily depleted by the failsafe activation, reverted to their base instincts. They attacked indiscriminately, their razor-sharp claws and teeth tearing through both Ravager and Defender alike. "No, no, no," Volkov muttered, her fingers flying across her datapad. This wasn't supposed to happen. I need to regain control before they tear everything apart. In the polar regions, Korg and his team finally managed to shut down the malfunctioning climate control facility. But as the last system powered down, a massive storm system began to spread across the planet. "Stone," Korg's gruff voice came through the comm. "We've shut it down, but we've got a big problem. This storm is like nothing I've ever seen." As if to emphasize his point, a deafening crack of thunder split the air. Hurricane-force winds began to howl, carrying with them debris and freezing rain. Visibility dropped to near zero as the storm engulfed more and more of the planet's surface. Deep beneath the planet's crust, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt monitored the effects of his controlled energy releases. Combined with the activation of the failsafe system, they had triggered a series of powerful tremors across the planet. "Fascinating," Reinhardt murmured as he studied the seismic readings. His eyes widened as he noticed something unexpected. "Commander Stone, the seismic activity is opening up new fissures and caverns. I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with precursor technology in these newly exposed areas." Before Stone could respond, a priority alert flashed across the main display. A new wave of ships was entering the system, the second Ravager fleet. "Commander," a sensor operator called out. "The new Ravager ships, they're not being affected by the failsafe system's energy pulse. They appear to be using older, more primitive technology." Stone's teeth gritted as he assessed the situation. Their advanced defenses were compromised, and now they faced a new wave of enemies. He keyed his comm, his voice steady despite the dire circumstances. "All units, this is Commander Stone. Prepare for a new wave of Ravager forces. I want all available personnel to switch to backup systems and manual operations where possible. We're not out of this fight yet." As Stone issued his orders, a lone escape pod streaked through the turbulent atmosphere, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. Inside, Thor, the Ravager leader, seethed with fury. His technologically superior forces had been neutralized, but he was far from defeated. The pod slammed into the ground near the outskirts of the temple complex. Thor emerged, his eyes blazing with murderous intent. He surveyed the chaotic battlefield, watching as his remaining ground troops regrouped. "To me, Ravagers!" Thor roared, his voice carrying over the howling wind and rumbling thunder. "We will take this world by force. No trickery or cowardly tactics will deny us our prize. Attack!" As Thor rallied his forces for a final desperate assault on the temple complex, Commander Stone faced a difficult decision. Captain Zorn of the Cracks Collective appeared on the main screen, his alien features set in a calculating expression. "Commander Stone," Zorn said, his voice smooth despite the urgency of the situation, "my fleet stands ready to assist you against this new Ravager threat. In exchange, we demand exclusive rights to salvage Ravager technology from the battlefield. What say you, Commander? Time is of the essence." Stone's mind raced, weighing the need for reinforcements against the potential consequences of allowing the opportunistic Cracks access to advanced alien technology. As he opened his mouth to respond, another tremor shook the command center, a stark reminder of the planet's increasing instability. The failsafe system's activation had changed the course of the battle, but the war for the hidden precursor world was a long way to go. With new threats emerging and the planet itself seeming to tear itself apart, Commander Stone and his forces faced their greatest challenge yet. The next few hours would determine not only their fate, but potentially that of the entire galaxy. As Commander Stone weighed his response to Captain Zorn's offer, the planet itself seemed to rebel against the conflict raging across its surface. Another violent tremor shook the command center, sending equipment crashing to the floor and forcing Stone to grab onto a nearby console for support. "We don't have time for negotiations," Stone growled, his eyes narrowing as he studied the tactical display. The incoming Ravager fleet loomed ever closer, their primitive technology rendering them immune to the failsafe system's effects. "Captain Zorn, your assistance is appreciated. Engage the Ravager fleet, but we'll discuss salvage rights after we've secured this planet." Zorn's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or irritation. "Very well, Commander. The Cracks Collective stands ready to assist. We shall revisit our arrangement once victory is assured." As the communication channel closed, Stone turned to his tactical officer. Status report on our orbital defenses? The officer's fingers flew across her console. Sir, we've lost approximately 60% of our orbital platforms, but the remaining ones are still operational. However, their effectiveness against the incoming fleet is uncertain given the Ravager's outdated technology. Stone's mind raced, considering their options. His gaze fell upon the swirling storm systems, spreading across the planet's surface, an idea forming in his mind. What if we use the planet's atmosphere against them? He mused aloud. The tactical officer looked up, intrigued. Sir, the climate control facility might be offline, but we still have a massive storm system to work with, Stone explained, his voice gaining confidence. Direct the remaining orbital platforms to fire targeted energy bursts into the storm. Let's see if we can create some controlled lightning strikes to disable those ships as they enter the atmosphere. As Stone's orders were relayed, the battle on the ground continued to rage. In the chamber housing the central control node, Brian Johnson's eyes fluttered open. He gasped, his body still trembling from the massive influx of bioelectric energy. As his senses returned, he became acutely aware of a presence in his mind. Not just one, but many. The Xenoraptors, he whispered, his eyes widening with realization. The psychic link he had established during the failsafe activation had not only persisted but strengthened. He could feel the creature's primal instincts, their confusion, and their raw power coursing through his consciousness. Outside the temple complex, Dr. Elena Volkov watched in horror as the enhanced Xenoraptors continued their rampage. Suddenly, she noticed a change in their behavior. The creatures paused, their heads tilting as if listening to an unheard command. Inside the control chamber, Brian closed his eyes, concentrating on the mental connection. Focus, he muttered through gritted teeth. Attack the Ravagers, protect the Defenders. Across the battlefield, the enhanced Xenoraptors suddenly changed course. With terrifying precision, they began to target Ravager troops, their bioelectric abilities still depleted, but their physical prowess undiminished. Lieutenant Jack Harper, witnessing the sudden shift in the Xenoraptors' behavior, allowed himself a moment of hope. That hope was short-lived as VexCorp and his elite guard pressed their attack, their cybernetic enhancements giving them a significant advantage in close-quarters combat. Fall back to the secondary positions, Harper shouted, firing his weapon to provide cover for his retreating team. As they moved deeper into the temple complex, Harper's foot caught on something protruding from the ground. He stumbled, his hand brushing against a section of wall as he regained his balance. To his amazement, the wall panel slid open, revealing a cache of sleek, otherworldly weapons. Precursor tech, Harper breathed, his eyes widening. Without hesitation, he grabbed one of the weapons, feeling its weight and balance. Everyone, arm up! Let's show these Ravager bastards what real advanced technology can do. As Harper's team engaged VexCorp's forces with their newfound arsenal, Dr. Volkov worked frantically to regain control of the situation. She hurried to join a group of Luminarian elders who were attempting to calibrate a frequency emitter. If we can match the resonance frequency of their enhanced bioelectric fields, Volkov explained, her fingers flying across her datapad, we might be able to calm them down without compromising their new abilities. In the polar regions, Korg and his team finally managed to shut down the last of the climate control facility systems. As the massive generators fell silent, Korg noticed a faint glow emanating from a previously hidden section of the wall. What in the frozen hells? He muttered, approaching cautiously. As he drew closer, a panel slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with alien machinery. Stone, he called over the comm, his gruff voice tinged with awe. You're not going to believe what we found up here. Meanwhile, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt's team had been analyzing the seismic data from the recent tremors. As new fissures opened across the planet's surface, Reinhardt detected energy signatures that matched known precursor technology. Commander Stone, Reinhardt reported, excitement evident in his voice. The seismic activity is revealing new precursor installations. If we can access them, we might find technology or information crucial to turning the tide of this battle. As the defenders rallied and new discoveries were made, Drakthor emerged from his crashed escape pod, his eyes blazing with fury. He surveyed the chaotic battlefield, watching as his troops regrouped around him. "The humans think they've won because they've disabled our advanced technology," Drakthor snarled, his voice carrying over the howling wind. "But we are Ravagers. We will tear this world apart with our bare hands if we must." With a roar that seemed to shake the very ground, Drakthor led his forces in a headlong charge towards the temple complex. As the two armies clashed once again, the hidden precursor world trembled, its ancient secrets rising to the surface amidst the fury of battle. In orbit, the remaining defense platforms began to fire precisely targeted energy bursts into the raging storm systems below. Bolts of controlled lightning arced through the turbulent atmosphere, striking the incoming Ravager ships as they began their descent. One by one, the primitive vessels began to falter, their systems overloaded by the tremendous electrical discharges. Commander Stone watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction, but he knew the battle was just getting started. The planet's instability was increasing, new precursor sites were being uncovered, and Drakthor's ground forces were still a formidable threat. As reports flooded in from all fronts, Stone steeled himself for the challenges ahead, knowing that the fate of this hidden world, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. Balance. The next few hours would determine not only their fate, but potentially that of the entire galaxy. As reports flooded in from all fronts, Stone's mind raced with possibilities. He knew they needed a multifaceted approach to turn the tide of battle. His eyes narrowed as he focused on the tactical display, formulating a plan that would utilize every asset at their disposal. "Johnson," Stone barked into his comm, "I need you to take control of those enhanced Xenoraptors. Form a defensive perimeter around the temple complex. Use their bioelectric abilities to create an energy barrier. That should buy us some time against Drakthor's forces." Brian Johnson, still reeling from the psychic connection he'd established with the creatures, nodded grimly. He closed his eyes, concentrating on the mental link. The Xenoraptors responded immediately, their movements becoming more coordinated and purposeful. They converged on the temple complex, forming a living wall of scales and crackling energy. Drakthor's advancing troops slammed into this unexpected barrier, their weapons proving ineffective against the pulsing bioelectric field. The Ravager leader snarled in frustration, his eyes blazing with fury as he watched his initial assault grind to a halt. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Jack Harper gathered his team, their newly acquired precursor weapons humming with power. "We're going to hit them where it hurts," he announced, his voice filled with tenacity. "There's a network of underground tunnels that'll let us emerge behind their lines. We'll disrupt their command structure and sow chaos in their ranks." Harper's team, a mix of human soldiers and tunneler allies, moved swiftly through the ancient passages. The tunnelers' knowledge of the subterranean network proved invaluable as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. Above ground, Dr. Elena Volkov worked feverishly with a team of human and Luminarian scientists. They had commandeered the climate control technology from the polar facility, repurposing it into a localized weather manipulation system. "If we can generate a strong enough electrical storm over their positions," Volkov explained, her fingers flying over a control panel, "we should be able to disrupt their communications and hamper their advance." The sky above the Ravager forces began to darken, clouds swirling ominously. Lightning arced between the roiling cloud masses, striking the ground with increasing frequency. The Ravager troops scattered, their formations breaking apart as they sought shelter from the intensifying electrical barrage. In orbit, the situation took a dramatic turn. Alex Chen, his face illuminated by the glow of his console, looked up with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Commander Stone," he called out, "I've cracked it. I've decrypted the Ravager data core and found the activation codes for their disabled ships." Stone's eyes widened at the implications. "Transmit those codes to Captain Zorn immediately," he ordered. "Let's see if the cracks can turn some of those ships against their former masters." As the information was relayed to the Crack's fleet, several of the dormant Ravager vessels suddenly sprang to life. Their engines ignited, maneuvering thrusters engaging as they turned to face their former allies. Captain Zorn's mandibles clicked in satisfaction as he watched the commandeered ships join his fleet, bolstering their strength against the incoming second wave of Ravager forces. On the ground, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt and his team made a groundbreaking discovery at one of the newly exposed precursor sites. They stood before a massive structure, its surface covered in pulsing lines of energy. "It's some kind of energy converter," Reinhardt breathed, his eyes wide with awe. "If we can activate it, it could harness the planet's geothermal power on an unprecedented scale. We might be able to stabilize the tectonic activity and power up all the precursor defense systems." As Reinhardt's team worked to bring the energy converter online, Brian Johnson felt a sudden surge of information flood his mind. The Alpha Prime Xenoraptor, still linked to his consciousness, seemed to be channeling ancient knowledge. "Commander," Brian called out, his voice strained with the effort of processing the influx of information. "There's a hidden precursor command center deep within the planet's core. We can access it, but it requires a specific sequence of bioelectric pulses." Stone recognized the potential game-changing nature of this discovery. "Johnson, take a small team and attempt to access that command center. Korg," he addressed the Norcadian warrior, "you're in charge of the expedition. Keep Johnson safe as you make your descent." As Brian's team began their perilous journey into the planet's depths, Drakthor launched a desperate assault on the temple complex. The Ravager leader emerged from the chaos of battle, piloting a massive battle mech cobbled together from salvaged technology. The ground shook with each thunderous step as the monstrous machine advanced on the defender's position. Lieutenant Harper and his team, having successfully emerged behind enemy lines, now found themselves facing this new threat. They raised their precursor weapons, the alien technology humming to life as they prepared to engage Drakthor's battle mech in a fierce confrontation at the temple's main entrance. In the skies above, the second Ravager fleet pushed through the planetary storms, beginning their final approach. Captain Zorn's mercenary fleet, now reinforced with the commandeered Ravager ships, moved to intercept. The resulting space battle lit up the turbulent atmosphere, a dazzling display of destruction visible even from the ground. As the conflict raged across multiple fronts, Dr. Volkov made a startling discovery about the enhanced Xenoraptors. She watched in amazement as the creature's bioelectric abilities began to resonate with the planet's natural energy field, creating a feedback loop that amplified their powers. "Commander Stone," she reported, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and concern, "I believe we can use this resonance to reactivate the damaged failsafe system. But there's a catch. It would likely burn out the Xenoraptor's enhanced abilities permanently." Before Stone could respond to this new development, an urgent communication came through from Dr. Sarah Chen at the Precursor Communication Array. "Commander," she said, her voice tight with nearly unleashed excitement, "we're detecting an incoming transmission from deep space. The coordinates match ancient precursor star charts. We don't know what it is, but the power signature, it's massive." Commander Stone stood at the center of the command room, the weight of multiple critical decisions pressing down on him. The battle had reached its climax, with victory or defeat hanging in the balance. As he prepared to issue his next set of orders, he knew that the choices made in the coming moments would shape not just the outcome of this conflict, but potentially the future of the entire galaxy. As Commander Stone weighed his options, Brian Johnson's team began their perilous descent towards the planet's core. The ancient tunnels twisted and turned, growing narrower as they delved deeper into the planet's crust. Korg took point, his massive frame barely squeezing through some of the tighter passages. The Norcadian warriors' enhanced strength proved invaluable as they encountered the first of the precursor security measures. A sudden rumble shook the tunnel, and a section of the ceiling began to collapse. Korg reacted instantly, bracing his shoulders against the falling debris. "Move!" he grunted, muscles straining as he held back tons of rock. Brian and the rest of the team rushed forward, ducking under Korg's arms. As the last member cleared the danger zone, Korg let out a roar and pushed upward with all his might. The falling rocks shifted, creating a temporary arch that allowed him to dash through before the tunnel collapsed behind them. Catching his breath, Brian's eyes widened as he saw what lay ahead. A chasm stretched before them, seemingly bottomless, with no visible way across. But as he focused his enhanced senses, he detected a faint bioelectric field emanating from nodes on either side of the gap. "It's a bridge," he said, closing his eyes to concentrate. "I can feel the energy pattern. Give me a moment." Brian's mind reached out, connecting with the ancient precursor technology. With a series of mental commands, he activated the nodes. Shimmering lines of energy coalesced, forming a translucent bridge across the chasm. Korg tested the energy construct with a cautious foot. Finding it solid, he nodded to the team. "Let's move. No telling how long this will hold." As they pressed deeper, they encountered more bioelectric locks blocking their path. Each time, Brian's psychic abilities allowed them to bypass the security measures, but the strain was beginning to show on his face. Meanwhile, at the temple complex, Lieutenant Jack Harper's forces engaged Drakthor's battle mech in a fierce firefight. The massive machine stomped forward, its weaponry laying down a barrage of fire that forced Harper's team to scatter for cover. "Concentrate fire on the legs," Harper shouted over the comm, his precursor weapon humming as he took aim. "We need to bring that thing down." His team responded with precision, their alien weapons piercing the mech's armor plating. Sparks flew as circuits and hydraulics were damaged, but Drakthor's piloting skills kept the machine moving. Inside the cockpit, Drakthor snarled in frustration. He could feel his creation failing around him, but he wasn't finished yet. With a savage grin, he pushed the mech to its limits, charging directly at the temple entrance. Harper's eyes widened as he realized Drakthor's intention. "Fall back!" he yelled, diving for cover as the massive machine crashed into the temple's outer wall. Stone and smoke filled the air as the mech's momentum carried it partway into the structure. For a moment, everything was still. Then, with a hiss of hydraulics, the cockpit opened, and Drakthor emerged, leading a group of elite Ravager troops. "Press the attack!" the Ravager leader roared, his eyes blazing with fanatical intensity. "The secrets of this world will be ours." Harper and his team retreated deeper into the temple, using the ancient architecture as cover. They fired back at the advancing Ravagers, their precursor weapons leaving scorch marks on the walls and floor. In orbit, the space battle reached a fever pitch. Captain Zorn's fleet, bolstered by the commandeered Ravager ships, clashed with the second wave of enemy forces. Zorn's tactics were unconventional, using the planet's debris field to his advantage. "All ships, execute maneuver Zorn Alpha 3, the Crack's commander ordered, his mandibles clicking in anticipation. His fleet scattered, each vessel taking cover behind larger pieces of wreckage. As the Ravager ships pushed forward, searching for targets, Zorn's forces emerged from their hiding spots, catching the enemy in a devastating crossfire. Back on the surface, Dr. Elena Volkov and her team worked feverishly to harness the resonance between the enhanced Xenoraptors and the planet's energy field. They had constructed a makeshift amplifier using salvaged precursor technology, the device humming with scarcely controlled power. "Initiating resonance cascade in 3, 2, 1, Volkov called out, her fingers flying over the controls. The enhanced Xenoraptors let out a collective shriek as their bioelectric fields surged. Arcs of energy danced between the creatures and the amplifier, growing in intensity. The air crackled with power as the failsafe system began to respond. But the strain on the Xenoraptors was evident. Several of the creatures collapsed, their enhanced abilities pushed beyond their limits. Volkov watched with a mixture of excitement and concern, knowing they were walking a razor's edge between success and disaster. As these events unfolded across the planet, Brian's team finally reached the core. What they found there left them in awe. A massive chamber stretched out before them, filled with pulsing biomechanical structures that seemed to be part of the planet itself. But their wonder was short-lived. A deep, reverberating growl echoed through the chamber. From the shadows emerged a colossal guardian, its form reminiscent of the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor, but on a scale that dwarfed even Korg. The biomechanical behemoth's eyes locked onto the intruders, ancient protocols awakening after eons of dormancy. It let out an ear-splitting roar that shook the very foundations of the chamber. Brian stepped forward, his mind reaching out to establish a psychic link with the Guardian. But as their consciousnesses touched, he was nearly overwhelmed by the sheer alienness of the creature's thoughts. Korg, seeing Brian struggle, quickly formulated a plan. "Distract it," he shouted to the rest of the team. I've got an idea. As the others engaged the Guardian, drawing its attention with their weapons, Korg studied its movements. He noticed patterns in the creature's energy emissions that corresponded to the bioelectric locks they had encountered earlier. With a grunt of effort, Korg charged forward, timing his movements to match the Guardian's energy pulses. He weaved through the creature's attacks, each step bringing him closer to the central control interface. Brian, still locked in psychic combat with the Guardian, sensed Korg's plan. With a supreme effort of will, he pushed deeper into the creature's mind, keeping it distracted as Korg made his approach. The Norcadian warrior reached the interface, his hand hovering over the controls. He took a deep breath, watching the Guardian's energy patterns. Then, with perfect timing, he slammed his palm down on the interface just as the creature emitted a powerful energy pulse. The chamber lit up with a blinding flash of bioelectric energy. For a moment, it seemed as if time itself had stopped. Then, slowly, the Guardian's movements began to slow, its eyes dimming as ancient systems recognized Korg's activation sequence. As the Guardian powered down, Brian stumbled, the psychic link suddenly severed. Korg caught him before he could fall, supporting the exhausted human. "We did it!" Brian gasped, looking up at the now-dormant Guardian. "We're in." But even as they savored this small victory, they knew the battle was just getting started. The planet's core hummed with untapped power, waiting to be unleashed. And above, on the surface and in orbit, the fate of this hidden precursor world still hung in the balance. Balance hung precariously. But for Brian Johnson and his team, the true battle was only just beginning. As the biomechanical Guardian powered down, the chamber's eerie silence was broken by Korg's deep voice. "We're not done yet. Look." The team's attention snapped to the far end of the chamber, where a massive door stood sealed with intricate bioelectric patterns. Brian, still leaning on Korg for support, narrowed his eyes in concentration. "Those patterns, they match the Guardian's energy signature," he said, his voice hoarse from the mental strain. Korg nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "Then we use the beast against itself." With rekindled willpower, the team spread out across the chamber. Korg positioned himself strategically, his keen eyes tracking the now-dormant Guardian's energy emissions. "When I give the signal, fire at these points," he instructed, indicating specific areas on the creature's body. The others readied their weapons, tension thick in the air. Korg waited, watching the subtle fluctuations in the Guardian's bioelectric field. Then, with a sharp nod, he shouted, "Now!" Precision shots struck the Guardian, eliciting bursts of energy that Korg expertly redirected towards the sealed door. Each impact activated another lock, the door's intricate patterns slowly unraveling. Meanwhile, in the temple complex above, Lieutenant Jack Harper and his forces found themselves in a desperate situation. They retreated to the central chamber, housing the Galactic Network interface, the sound of Ravager troops hot on their heels. "My, seal those entrances!" Harper barked, his eyes scanning the room for anything they could use as a defense. His team worked quickly, repurposing salvaged precursor technology to create shimmering energy barriers across the chamber's access points. No sooner had the last barrier flickered into place than Thor's elite Ravager troops arrived, their weapons blazing against the newly formed defenses. Harper gritted his teeth as he watched the energy barriers fluctuate under the assault. "Hold the line!" he shouted, returning fire with his precursor weapon. The battle raged on multiple fronts. In orbit, Captain Zorn stood on the bridge of his commandeered vessel, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction as the last Ravager boarding party was repelled. "Status report," he demanded, his compound eyes fixed on the tactical display. His second-in-command responded promptly. "Enemy fleet regrouping, Captain, but there's a weakness in their formation. Here." A claw indicated a point on the display where the Ravager ships had left a gap in their defenses. Zorn's eyes narrowed. "Excellent. All ships concentrate fire on these coordinates. Let's show these Ravagers how real warriors fight." The mercenary fleet moved with practiced precision, their weapons converging on the weak point in the Ravager formation. The resulting explosion chain-reacted through the enemy fleet, leaving several ships drifting and powerless. Back on the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Volkov watched with a mixture of fascination and concern as her resonance experiment with the enhanced xenoraptors reached a critical stage. The creature's bioelectric emissions grew stronger by the second, interacting with the planet's energy field in increasingly complex patterns. "Incredible," she murmured, her eyes flicking between her instruments and the xenoraptors. "The resonance is amplifying exponentially. If this continues—" Her words were cut short as a blinding pulse of energy erupted from the failsafe system, spreading across the planet's surface in a wave of crackling light. In an instant, all non-precursor technology went dark. In the sudden silence that followed, Volkov's voice came out as a whisper. "It worked. We've activated the failsafe." The pulse's effects rippled through every aspect of the battle. In the temple complex, Harper and his team found themselves with a sudden advantage as the Ravagers' energy weapons flickered and died. They pressed forward, using their precursor weapons to push back against Drakthor's forces. But Drakthor, ever opportunistic, used the chaos to slip past the defenders. He reached the galactic network interface, his fingers flying over the alien controls as he attempted to access the precursor network. Commander Stone, observing from his command post, recognized the danger immediately. "We can't let him access that network," he growled, turning to a group of tunnelers. "Create a new passage into the central chamber. Now!" As the tunnelers set to work, Stone gathered a small strike force. "We're going in. Drakthor ends this here." Deep within the planet's core, Brian's team finally breached the massive door, revealing the precursor command center beyond. They stepped into a vast chamber filled with technology beyond their wildest imagination. At its center stood a colossal crystalline structure, pulsing with an inner light. Brian approached it, drawn by an instinct he couldn't explain. As he reached out to touch the crystal, it responded to his enhanced bioelectric signature. The entire chamber came to life, holographic displays filling the air around them. "My God," one of the team members breathed. "It's showing us everything. The planet's systems, the battle above, and look, the galactic precursor network." Brian's eyes widened as he took in the flood of information. "This is it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "This is what we came for. Now we just need to figure out how to use it." As Brian and his team grappled with the ancient technology, Commander Stone and his strike force emerged in the temple's central chamber. They arrived just in time to see Drakthor inputting the final commands into the galactic network interface. Stone didn't hesitate. He charged forward, tackling Drakthor away from the controls. The two leaders grappled fiercely, their struggle a microcosm of the larger battle raging around them. "It's over, Drakthor," Stone growled, pinning the Ravager leader against a wall. "Your fleet is in shambles. Your troops are outmatched. Stand down!" Drakthor's eyes blazed with fanatical intensity. "Never! The secrets of this world will be mine!" As they fought, the planet itself seemed to respond to the conflict. New structures began to rise from the ground, altering the battlefield. A network of interconnected towers emerged, emitting a strange, pulsating energy field. Dr. Volkov, observing these changes from her position, quickly realized the implications. "The rising structures," she said into her comm, "they're amplifying the resonance between the xenoraptors and the planet's energy field. We can use this." She turned to her team, her eyes alight with scientific fervor. "Modify the equipment. We're going to boost their bioelectric output even further." In space, Captain Zorn's fleet and the remaining Ravager ships struggled to regain control of their systems, following the energy pulse. Zorn, ever the tactician, used this moment of chaos to reposition his fleet for a final, decisive push. As these events unfolded across multiple fronts, the fate of the hidden precursor world hung in the balance. The actions of each individual, from Brian in the planet's core to Stone in the temple complex, would determine not just the outcome of this battle, but potentially the future of the entire galaxy. Galaxy. Brian's fingers hovered over the crystalline structure, its pulsing light mesmerizing him. As he made contact, a surge of energy coursed through his body, connecting him to the planet-wide grid. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The ground beneath their feet trembled as massive structures began to emerge from the planet's crust. Korg steadied himself against a nearby console, his eyes wide with awe. "By the spirits of Norcadia," he breathed, watching as colossal cannons rose from the ground, their barrels aimed skyward. Brian's mind raced as he processed the influx of information from the precursor systems. "These are planetary defense weapons," he explained, his voice tight with concentration. "They're targeting the Ravager ships in orbit." As if on cue, the cannons roared to life, unleashing concentrated beams of energy into the atmosphere. The team watched in stunned silence as the beams pierced the clouds, their trajectory clearly visible even from deep within the planet's core. In orbit, Captain Zorn's tactical display lit up with new alerts. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he assessed the situation. "Incredible," he muttered, watching as the energy beams struck the Ravager ships with surgical precision. "Those planet-side weapons are disabling their propulsion systems one by one." Zorn's second-in-command leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the chaos unfolding before them. "Captain, this is our chance. The Ravagers are sitting ducks." With a predatory gleam in his eyes, Zorn nodded. "All ships, form up on my mark. We'll finish this once and for all." Back in the temple's central chamber, Commander Stone and Drakthor were locked in fierce hand-to-hand combat. The two leaders circled each other, their bodies tense and ready to strike. Stone's eyes narrowed, analyzing his opponent's every move. Drakthor lunged forward, his clawed hand swiping at Stone's face. The commander ducked under the attack, years of combat training kicking in. He countered with a swift uppercut, catching the Ravager leader under the chin. Stumbling back, Drakthor snarled, "You cannot stop the inevitable, human. The secrets of this world will be mine." Stone didn't waste breath on a reply. Instead, he pressed his advantage, unleashing a flurry of strikes that drove Drakthor back step by step. The Ravager leader's movements became increasingly desperate as he found himself outmatched. With a final, well-timed sweep of his leg, Stone sent Drakthor crashing to the ground. The Ravager leader lay there, dazed and defeated, as Stone towered over him. "Lieutenant Harper," Stone called out, his eyes never leaving his fallen opponent. "Secure the perimeter." Harper and his team sprang into action, their movements crisp and efficient. They quickly repurposed nearby precursor technology, erecting shimmering energy barriers around the central chamber. "Energy barriers in place, sir," Harper reported, his voice tight with adrenaline. "Drakthor's cut off from his troops." Outside the barriers, the remaining Ravager forces began to falter. Without their leader's guidance, their attacks became uncoordinated and desperate. Harper's team picked them off one by one, their precursor weapons humming with deadly efficiency. In the planet's core, Brian's connection to the precursor systems deepened. His eyes widened as he processed new information. "There's more," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "The planet, it's changing." As if in response to his words, the ground began to shift once more. New structures rose from the earth, their sleek designs unmistakably precursor in origin. Among them, a massive hangar facility emerged, housing a fleet of advanced spacecraft. Korg let out a low whistle. "Now that's what I call a game changer." Brian nodded, his mind racing with the implications. These ships, this technology, it could revolutionize everything we know about space travel. As the team marveled at the new discoveries, Dr. Elena Volkov's voice crackled over their comms. "Brian, are you seeing this? The resonance experiment with the Xenoraptors? It's reached a critical point." Brian quickly accessed the relevant data through his connection to the precursor systems. What he saw left him stunned. The Xenoraptors' bioelectric emissions had created a feedback loop with the planet-wide grid, enhancing their abilities beyond anything they had previously observed. "This is incredible," Brian muttered, watching as the enhanced Xenoraptors systematically hunted down the remaining pockets of Ravager resistance across the planet's surface. Their movements were coordinated, almost strategic, displaying a level of intelligence that was both awe-inspiring and slightly terrifying. In orbit, Captain Zorn's fleet launched their final assault. With the Ravager ships disabled by the planetary defense system, it was less a battle and more a cleanup operation. Zorn watched with satisfaction as his forces systematically neutralized the remaining enemy vessels. "Captain," his second-in-command reported, "we've detected a handful of Ravager ships attempting to flee the system." Zorn's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Not so fast," he growled, inputting a series of commands into his tactical display. "All ships, move to these coordinates. Let's close the net." As the mercenary fleet moved to block the Ravagers' escape routes, Brian made a startling discovery in the Precursor Command Center. The holographic interface displayed a vast network of interconnected Precursor worlds spread across the galaxy. "This planet," Brian said, his voice filled with awe, "it's not just a hidden world. It's a nexus point in a galactic network of Precursor installations." Korg leaned in, his eyes scanning the holographic map. "Can we activate the other sites from here?" Brian's fingers danced over the crystalline interface, initiating a sequence of commands. "I think so. Look!" The team watched as a signal pulsed from their location, traveling across the holographic map towards the nearest dormant Precursor world. The implications were staggering. They now had the potential to awaken an entire network of ancient technology spread across the galaxy. As the signal sped towards its destination, Brian couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. They stood on the brink of a new era, one that promised to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy and open up new frontiers for exploration and advancement. But with such power came great responsibility, and the challenges ahead were only just beginning. The Precursor Command Center hummed with energy, its systems fully awakened after eons of dormancy. As Brian and his team grappled with the enormity of their discovery, they knew that their adventure was far from finished. The true test lay ahead, harnessing this newfound power and ensuring it didn't fall into the wrong hands. The power at their fingertips was both exhilarating and terrifying. As Brian contemplated the implications of their discovery, an urgent message crackled through the comm system. It was Commander Stone's voice, tense with anticipation. "Johnson, we've got movement topside. A Precursor ship is powering up. I'm sending Chen and a team to investigate." Brian's eyes widened. "Understood, Commander. I'll see if I can get any information from here." He turned back to the crystalline interface, his fingers dancing across its surface. As he delved deeper into the Precursor systems, he stumbled upon a subroutine that made his heart race. "Terraforming capabilities," he muttered, his mind turning with possibilities. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Alex Chen led his specialized team through a landscape that seemed to shift before their eyes. Massive Precursor structures continued to emerge from the ground, creating a maze-like terrain that they had to navigate carefully. "Stay alert," Chen commanded, his voice low and steady. "We don't know what other surprises this planet might have in store for us." As they approached the regenerated Precursor ship, Chen's team came to an abrupt halt. The sight before them was unlike anything they had ever seen. The Alpha Prime Xenoraptor, its body now a fusion of flesh and machine, stood integrated with the ship's systems. Biomechanical implants spread throughout the vessel, pulsing with an eerie blue light. Chen raised his hand, signaling his team to hold position. "Approach with caution," he ordered. "We need to establish communication with whatever this is." Back in the temple's central chamber, Commander Stone secured Drakthor with restraints fashioned from salvaged Precursor technology. The Ravager leader snarled in defiance, but his struggles were futile against the advanced bindings. With Drakthor contained, Stone turned his attention to the galactic network interface. His fingers flew across the alien controls, initiating a data transfer. "Come on," he muttered, watching as streams of information about the Precursor civilization began flooding into their secure database. In the planet's core, Brian made a decision. With a deep breath, he activated the planetary-scale terraforming sequence. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The entire chamber shuddered as massive amounts of energy surged through the planet's systems. At the Precursor energy converter, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt and his team scrambled to monitor the sudden power surge. "What's happening?" one of his assistants shouted over the din of alarms. Reinhardt's eyes were glued to the readouts. "The converter is channeling energy into the atmosphere and crust," he explained, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and concern. "The planet is transforming itself." In orbit, Captain Zorn observed the unfolding events with a mix of awe and strategic calculation. The last of the Ravager ships had been neutralized, and now his attention was fully on the rapidly changing planet below. "Position the fleet in a defensive formation around the planet," Zorn ordered, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Whatever's happening down there, we need to be ready for any outside interference." On the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Volkov watched in fascination as her enhanced xenoraptors began exhibiting signs of collective intelligence. The creatures, their abilities amplified by the planet-wide precursor grid, started organizing themselves into a complex social hierarchy. "Incredible," Volkov breathed, furiously taking notes. "Their social evolution is accelerating at an unprecedented rate." At the precursor communication array, Dr. Sarah Chen's eyes widened as she finally cracked the code of the deep space transmission. "Commander Stone," she called urgently into her comm, "I've decoded the message. It contains coordinates for other active precursor installations across the galaxy, along with encryption keys to access their systems." As Chen relayed this crucial information, the signal sent by Brian from the command center reached its destination. Light years away, a dormant precursor world stirred to life. Ancient machinery hummed, and long silent defense systems powered up, sending detectable ripples through the fabric of space. In the newly revealed hangar facility, Lieutenant Jack Harper led his team through rows of pristine precursor spacecraft. The vessels, preserved in stasis for millennia, looked as if they had been built yesterday. "Careful," Harper cautioned as his team began examining the nearest ship. "We need to understand these systems before we attempt to activate anything." As they worked, the planet continued its rapid transformation around them. Barren landscapes bloomed into lush fields, and toxic atmospheres cleared to reveal breathable air. The hidden world was becoming a paradise before their eyes, but Harper couldn't shake the feeling that such rapid change might come with unforeseen consequences. In the midst of this whirlwind of activity, Alex Chen's team continued their careful approach to the precursor ship and its Xenoraptor interface. Chen's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan to establish communication with this hybrid entity. As they drew closer, the biomechanical implants pulsed with increased intensity, as if sensing their presence. Chen took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "This is it, team," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. "Let's make contact." First contact. Chen's voice was steady, but his heart raced as he led his team towards the transformed precursor ship. As they drew closer, the biomechanical implants covering the vessel's surface pulsed with increased intensity. The Alpha Prime Xenoraptor, now fully integrated with the ship's systems, turned its attention to the approaching humans. Chen held up his hand, signaling his team to halt. Suddenly, a tendril-like appendage extended from the ship, reaching out towards Chen. The team tensed, weapons at the ready, but Chen raised his hand again. "Hold your fire," he commanded, his eyes fixed on the undulating appendage. Drawing on his extensive knowledge of Xenoraptor biology, Chen took a cautious step forward. The tendril wavered, then gently touched his outstretched hand. A jolt of energy passed through Chen's body, and his mind filled with a rush of alien sensations and fragmented images. "It's communicating," Chen gasped, his eyes wide. "The Alpha Prime, it wants to launch to explore the precursor network." Lieutenant Harper, standing nearby, frowned. "Is that safe? We don't know what it might do out there." Chen's mind raced, weighing the potential risks and benefits. In a split-second decision, he stepped closer to the ship. "I'm going to attempt to interface with it," he announced. "If I can establish a deeper connection, we might be able to guide its actions." As Chen worked to forge a link with the hybrid entity, Commander Stone continued his data extraction in the temple's central chamber. His fingers flew across the alien interface, streams of information flooding into their secure database. Suddenly, Stone's eyes widened. "Johnson," he called into his comm, "we've got a situation. The activation of that dormant precursor world has triggered some kind of security protocol. We've got incoming." In the planet's core, Brian Johnson's hands danced across the crystalline controls. "I see them," he confirmed, his voice tense. "Multiple fleets converging on our position. And something else. Autonomous drones, I think. Precursor in origin." Johnson activated the planet's long-range sensors, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing the approaching forces. "We've got several known species in the mix," he reported. "Some of them, they don't look friendly." In the hangar facility, Lieutenant Harper received the alert. "Copy that," he responded, turning to his team. "Let's step it up, people. We need these ships operational yesterday." Harper approached the nearest precursor vessel, his hand hovering over its sleek surface. Taking a deep breath, he placed his palm on the ship's hull. To his amazement, the vessel hummed to life, its systems activating in response to his touch. "Incredible," Harper muttered as he climbed into the cockpit. The ship's interior lit up, displays flickering with alien symbols. Harper's fingers moved across the controls, guided by an instinct he couldn't explain. The ship's weapon systems came online, revealing an arsenal that made Earth's most advanced technology look primitive in comparison. On the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Volkov watched in awe as her enhanced xenoraptors began constructing complex structures using the emerging precursor technology. The creatures moved with uncanny coordination, their actions guided by a collective intelligence that seemed to grow more sophisticated by the minute. "They're building amplifiers," Volkov realized, her voice filled with excitement. "They're increasing their ability to interact with the precursor systems across the planet." In orbit, Captain Zorn observed the approaching fleets with a mixture of anticipation and concern. "All ships, form up," he ordered. "Create a defensive perimeter around the planet. Prepare for potential hostiles." As Zorn's fleet moved into position, scout ships darted out to gather intelligence on the incoming forces. The mercenary captain's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he analyzed the data. The situation was volatile, with multiple factions converging on their position, each with their own agenda. Back in the command center, Brian Johnson noticed a sudden spike in energy readings. "Dr. Reinhardt," he called over the comm, "are you seeing this?" In the precursor energy converter chamber, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt stared at his readouts in disbelief. "Affirmative," he responded, his voice tight with excitement. "The converter's tapping into some kind of energy source in the planet's core. It's amplifying the terraforming process exponentially." As if in response to Reinhardt's words, the ground began to shake. Massive precursor structures burst from beneath the planet's crust, forming a network of towering spires that reached towards the sky. Energy crackled between the towers, forming a shimmering field that enveloped the entire planet. In the temple's central chamber, Commander Stone received an urgent transmission from Dr. Sarah Chen. "Commander," Chen's voice crackled over the comm, "I've decoded more of the deep space transmission. It's a warning about the security protocol. Those precursor drones, they're coming to investigate the activation signal." Stone's face hardened. "Understood, Doctor. Keep working on that transmission. We need all the information we can get." As the human-led forces scrambled to prepare for the impending confrontation, Alex Chen found himself partially interfaced with the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor in the precursor ship. His mind swam with alien data, star maps flashing before his eyes. "The network," Chen gasped, his voice strained. "I can see it. Other precursor worlds, installations, spread throughout the galaxy." With trembling hands, Chen initiated a data transfer, downloading the star map to a secure human database. As the information flowed, he couldn't help but marvel at the potential implications of this discovery. Commander Stone's voice cut through the chaos, firm and resolute. "Attention all personnel," he announced over the base-wide comm system. "We are forming a joint command structure. I want representatives from all allied species to report to the central command post immediately. We need to coordinate our defenses, and we need to do it now." As Stone's orders rang out, Lieutenant Harper climbed out of the precursor ship's cockpit, his palms sweating from the experience. "All right, listen up," he called to his team. "We've got a crash course in alien piloting to run. I need our best and brightest ready to fly these things. The future of humanity might just depend on it." In the planet's core, Brian Johnson's fingers flew across the precursor controls. The hidden world shuddered as he initiated a series of orbital adjustments, optimizing the planet's position for the coming confrontation. As the preparations reached a fever pitch, the first wave of alien scout ships entered the outer reaches of the star system. The human-led forces braced themselves, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just their fate, but potentially the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The air crackled with tension as they awaited the arrival of the unknown forces. In the command center, Commander Stone surveyed the holographic displays, his eyes hard with persistence. "All units, stand ready," he ordered. "We're about to make history." "All units, stand ready," Commander Stone ordered. "We're about to make our move." As the words left his mouth, the first wave of alien scout ships appeared on the long-range sensors. Stone's fingers flew across the control panel, activating the planet's newly discovered defensive capabilities. The network of interconnected precursor towers hummed to life, emitting a pulsating energy that spread rapidly across the sky. "Initiating planetary cloaking field," Stone announced, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The energy coalesced into a shimmering barrier, enveloping the entire planet. In orbit, Captain Zorn watched in awe as the hidden precursor world seemingly vanished from view, leaving only empty space where a planet once stood. "Remarkable," Zorn muttered, his mandibles clicking in appreciation. He turned to his crew. "Deploy sensor buoys and stealth probes. I want eyes on those incoming fleets." Back on the surface, Alex Chen completed the star map download, his mind still partially linked with the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor and the precursor ship. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he processed the flood of alien data. "Launch sequence initiated," Chen reported, his voice strained. The ship hummed to life, its ancient systems responding to his mental commands. With a burst of energy, the vessel rose from the ground, ascending through the planet's atmosphere. In the hangar facility, Lieutenant Jack Harper climbed into the cockpit of a precursor spacecraft. "All right, team," he called out to the newly trained pilots. "This is what we've been preparing for. Let's see what these babies can do." The hangar doors slid open, revealing the transformed landscape beyond. One by one, the precursor ships took flight, their sleek forms gliding through the air with unnatural grace. Harper led them through a series of maneuvers, testing the limits of the ancient technology. "Form up on me," Harper ordered. "We'll run through the defensive formations. Remember, we need to be ready to repel attacks from any direction." As the pilots honed their skills, Brian Johnson worked tirelessly in the planet's core. His fingers danced across the crystalline controls, bringing a series of orbital defense platforms online. Hidden within the planet's moons and nearby asteroids, these platforms powered up, their weapon systems primed and ready. "Orbital defenses active," Johnson reported to Commander Stone. "Calibrating targeting systems now." In her research station, Dr. Elena Volkov watched in fascination as her enhanced Xenoraptors began to interface with the planet's defensive systems. The creatures moved with eerie synchronicity, their bodies pulsing with bioelectric energy as they linked the various precursor structures. "Incredible," Volkov breathed, furiously taking notes. "They're acting as living conduits, amplifying the power output of the entire network." At the precursor energy converter, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt noticed a sudden surge in power readings. His eyes widened as he realized the implications. "The converter's tapping directly into the planet's core," he muttered, his fingers flying across the controls. "I need to recalibrate the systems to handle this level of output." As Reinhardt worked to stabilize the energy flow, Dr. Sarah Chen's voice crackled over the comm system. "Commander Stone, I've detected a new transmission from the reactivated precursor world. It contains critical information about the incoming defense drones." Stone's brow furrowed. "Decode it as quickly as you can, Doctor. We need every advantage we can get." Outside the cloaking field, the alien scout ships began to disperse throughout the system. Some attempted to penetrate the energy barrier with advanced scanning techniques, while others set up observation posts on nearby celestial bodies. In high orbit, Alex Chen piloted the precursor ship towards the outer edges of the system. Using the Xenoraptor interface, he maintained perfect stealth as he gathered intelligence on the alien fleets. "Commander," Chen reported, his voice tense with concentration, "I'm sending you real-time data on the composition and movements of the potential invaders." As the various defensive preparations continued, Brian Johnson's voice cut through the comm chatter. "Commander Stone, we have an anomaly. Long-range sensors have detected an unidentified object approaching at FTL speeds. Energy signature matches the expected precursor defense drones. Stone's face hardened. Understood. All units, accelerate your preparations. We're running out of time. Throughout the hidden precursor world, activity reached a fever pitch. The transformed planet, jam-packed with ancient defenses and teeming with newly awakened biomechanical guardians, stood ready to face the converging threats. As the first wave of alien scout ships probed the edges of the cloaking field and the precursor defense drones rapidly approached, Commander Stone surveyed the holographic displays in the command center. The coming hours would test the limits of human ingenuity and their mastery over the newly acquired precursor technology. Stone took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the faces of his team. This is it, people. Let's show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Stone's words hung in the air for a moment before he sprang into action. Johnson, activate the orbital defense platforms, he ordered, his voice sharp and clear. Target them at the projected entry point of those incoming drones. Brian Johnson's fingers flew across the control panel, bringing the hidden weapons to life. Orbital defenses online, Commander. Targeting systems locked and ready. Stone nodded, then turned to the holographic display. Lieutenant Harper, take your squadron up. I want a defensive formation around the planet's atmosphere. Roger that, Commander, Harper responded, his voice crackling over the comm. In the hangar, he signaled to his newly trained pilots. All right, people, this is it. Let's show these alien bastards what we can do with their own tech. The precursor ships rose from the ground, their sleek forms cutting through the air as they ascended into the upper atmosphere. Harper's voice echoed through the cockpits as he guided his team into position. Form up on me, remember your training, and watch each other's backs. Meanwhile, Alex Chen piloted his stealth precursor ship towards the outer reaches of the system, the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor's consciousness intertwined with his own. As he approached the projected entry point, his sensors lit up with activity. Commander, Chen reported, his voice tense with concentration. I've got visual on the incoming object. Confirming now, it's a fleet of precursor defense drones, transmitting detailed scans to you now. Back on the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Volkov watched in fascination as her enhanced Xenoraptors began to pulse with bioelectric energy. The creatures moved in perfect synchronization, interfacing with the planet's defensive systems. Incredible, Volkov muttered, her eyes wide as she observed the readings on her tablet. They're creating a network of localized disruptions in the energy field. This could seriously mess with the drone's navigation and targeting systems. In orbit, Captain Zorn's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the incoming data. Commander Stone, he called over the secure channel, we're picking up increased activity among the alien scout ships. They're converging on the drone's entry point. Understood, Captain, Stone replied. Keep your forces at the ready. We may need to intervene if things get out of hand. Dr. Marcus Reinhardt's voice cut through the comm chatter, his tone urgent. Commander, we've got a problem. The energy draw from the defensive systems is causing microfractures in the planet's crust. I'm implementing emergency protocols now. Stone's brow furrowed. Do what you need to do, Doctor. We can't afford to lose our foothold here. Reinhardt worked feverishly, redirecting excess energy through the network of precursor structures that had emerged across the planet's surface. The ground trembled slightly, but the fractures began to stabilize. Suddenly, the void of space lit up with weapons fire. The precursor defense drones had arrived, immediately engaging the alien scout ships that had gathered to meet them. Commander Stone watched the battle unfold on the holographic display, his mind racing with possibilities. Chen, he called out, use this distraction to gather more intel on the aliens' capabilities. We need every advantage we can get. Copy that, Chen responded, maneuvering his cloaked ship closer to the fray. In the planet's core, Brian Johnson activated a series of hidden precursor satellites scattered throughout the system's asteroid belt. A powerful jamming field spread out, disrupting long-range communications between the alien fleets and their homeworlds. Jamming field active, Commander, Johnson reported. The invading forces are now cut off from calling for reinforcements. On the surface, Lieutenant Harper's voice crackled over the comm. Squadron is in position, Commander. We're ready to intercept any forces that break through the outer defenses. Stone nodded, his eyes never leaving the holographic display. Implement your rotating shift system, Lieutenant. I want our pilots fresh and ready for action at all times. As the battle between the precursor drones and alien scout ships intensified, Dr. Sarah Chen's voice came through, filled with excitement. Commander, I've established a tentative connection with the defense drones. I'm transmitting a series of authentication codes now. If this works, we might be able to turn them to our side. Stone allowed himself a small smile. Excellent work, Doctor. Keep at it. The command center suddenly filled with a series of urgent beeps. Johnson's eyes widened as he processed the incoming data. Commander, the larger alien vessels are on the move. They're deploying advanced scanning technology. Our cloaking field is holding for now, but they're slowly breaking through. Stone's heart made. He took a deep breath, then spoke with calm authority. Activate the dormant precursor biomechanical guardians. Have them take up defensive positions around key installations. As the ancient creatures stirred to life, responding to commands from the enhanced Xenoraptors, Alex Chen's voice came through the comm. Commander, I've managed to infiltrate one of the larger alien vessels. Downloading tactical information now. You're not going to believe what I'm seeing. The battle continued to escalate, with humanity and its allies at the center of a cosmic storm. As Commander Stone processed the flood of information and coordinated his forces, he knew that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of this hidden precursor world, but potentially the future of humanity itself. As the battle raged on, Commander Stone's mind raced with possibilities. The chaos unfolding before him demanded swift action. He turned to his communications officer, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Get me Chen on a secure channel, he ordered. Moments later, Alex Chen's voice crackled through the speaker. Chen here, Commander. What are your orders? Stone's eyes narrowed as he studied the holographic display of the battlefield. I need you to approach the largest alien vessel. It appears to be coordinating their fleet's movements. Use your stealth capabilities to get close, then activate the electromagnetic pulse generator we discovered. Let's see if we can throw their command structure into disarray. Understood, sir, Chen replied, his voice taut with concentration. Moving into position now. On the fringes of the battle, Chen piloted the precursor ship with expert precision. The vessel glided silently through the chaos, weaving between bursts of weapons fire and debris. As he approached the massive alien flagship, Chen's fingers hovered over the controls of the newly discovered EMP generator. In range, Commander, Chen reported. Initiating pulse in 3, 2, 1. A blinding flash of energy erupted from the precursor ship, engulfing the alien flagship in a sea of crackling electricity. The effect was immediate and devastating. The once fearsome vessel's lights flickered and died, its engines sputtering into silence as it began to drift aimlessly through space. Stone allowed himself a grim smile. Excellent work, Chen. Maintain your position and continue gathering intel. With the alien command structure in disarray, Stone saw his opportunity. He opened a channel to Lieutenant Harper's squadron. Harper, this is our chance. Take your team and engage the nearest alien vessels. Disable them if possible, but do not destroy them unless absolutely necessary. Copy that, Commander, Harper responded, his voice filled with anticipation. All right, squad, you heard the man. Let's show these aliens what we can do with their own tech. The squadron of precursor ships burst from the planet's atmosphere, their sleek forms gleaming in the light of distant stars. As they closed in on the nearest alien vessels, Harper's voice rang out over the comm system. Remember your training. Use the inertial dampeners to your advantage and watch for openings in their defense grid. The human pilots, still adjusting to the advanced precursor technology, pushed their ships to the limit. They wove through the alien formation, unleashing precise bursts of energy that disabled propulsion systems and weapons arrays without completely destroying the vessels. As the space battle intensified, activity on the planet's surface reached a fever pitch. In her research station, Dr. Elena Volkov monitored the enhanced Xenoraptor's neural network with growing excitement. Suddenly, her eyes widened as she processed the incoming data. Commander Stone, she called out urgently, The Xenoraptors have detected a group of alien infiltrators. They must have slipped through during the initial chaos. Stone's eyes sharp. Can your creatures handle the situation, Doctor? Volkov nodded, her fingers flying across her control panel. Absolutely. I'm directing them to intercept now. Across the transformed landscape, the enhanced Xenoraptors moved with eerie synchronicity. Their bodies pulsed with bioelectric energy as they converged on the alien intruders. The infiltrators, caught off guard by the swift and coordinated response, found their advanced equipment short-circuiting as the Xenoraptors unleashed controlled bursts of energy. In the planet's core, Brian Johnson's eyes darted across multiple displays, processing the flood of incoming data. As he observed the movements of the precursor defense drones, a pattern began to emerge. "Commander," Johnson called out, his voice tinged with excitement, "I think I've cracked the drone's behavioral algorithm. Give me a few minutes and I might be able to turn them against the alien fleet." Stone nodded approvingly. "Do it, Johnson. We need every advantage we can get." As Johnson worked feverishly to develop his program, Dr. Sarah Chen's voice cut through the comm chatter. "Commander, I've done it. I've established limited control over a portion of the defense drones, redirecting them to form a protective barrier around the planet now." The autonomous drones, responding to Chen's commands, began to reposition themselves. They formed concentric rings around the planet, their weapon systems primed and ready to intercept any alien ships that might break through. In the depths of space, Captain Zorn watched the unfolding battle with calculating eyes. Seeing the aliens' disorganization, he made his decision. "All ships, advance! Target their propulsion systems. Let's make sure these invaders have nowhere to run." Zorn's mercenary fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing. With precision born of years of combat experience, they systematically disabled the engines of alien ship after alien ship. Soon, a field of immobilized vessels drifted in space, creating an impromptu obstacle course for any remaining functional alien craft. As the tide of battle seemed to turn in humanity's favor, an ominous rumble shook the planet's surface. In the energy converter facility, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt's face paled as he read the incoming data. "Commander Stone," he called out, his voice tight with urgency, "we have a critical situation. The power draw from the battle is causing dangerous fluctuations in the planet's core. I'm initiating emergency protocols now, but I can't predict the outcome." Reinhardt's fingers flew across the controls as he rerouted excess energy through a newly discovered network of subterranean precursor conduits. The ground trembled violently, and for a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as if the entire planet might tear itself apart. Then, with a deafening roar, massive geometric structures began to rise from beneath the surface. Enormous crystalline towers pierced the sky, their facets gleaming with otherworldly energy. As they reached their full height, a shimmering field of energy expanded outward, engulfing the entire star system. In the command center, alarms blared as sensors struggled to process the sudden change. Stone's voice cut through the chaos. "Report! What's happening out there?" Johnson's voice came through, filled with awe and confusion. "Commander, these structures, they're generating some kind of energy field. It's interfering with FTL drives across the entire system. We're all trapped here, us, the aliens, and the precursor drones." Stone's mind raced as he processed the implications of this development. He keyed his comms system, his voice steady and authoritative. "All forces, fall back to defensive positions around the planet. Johnson, I need you to fine-tune that energy field. Create safe corridors for our ships, but keep the trap in place for hostiles." As the human forces regrouped, Chen's urgent voice came through the comm. "Commander, the alien flagship is showing signs of power restoration. I'm intercepting communications. They're planning a final, all-out assault on the planet." Stone's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the holographic battlefield. The human-led forces now controlled a formidable defensive perimeter, bolstered by ancient technology and the unexpected planetary changes. But the threat of a massive alien counterattack loomed large, and the erratic precursor drones added an element of unpredictability to an already chaotic situation. "Understood, Chen," Stone replied, his mind already formulating strategies to counter this final push. "Stay on them. We need every scrap of intel you can provide." As the command center buzzed with activity, Stone took a deep breath, preparing himself for the climactic battle that would determine not just the fate of this hidden precursor world, but potentially the balance of power throughout the galaxy. Commander Stone's eyes narrowed as he processed Chen's urgent message. The alien flagship's imminent restoration posed a dire threat to their hard-won advantage. He knew the next few moments would determine the outcome of this cosmic clash. "All units, prepare for the enemy's final push," Stone's voice rang out, clear and authoritative. "Johnson, reconfigure the energy field. I want layered defensive barriers to slow their advance and funnel them into our engagement zones." Johnson's fingers flew across his console, manipulating the complex energy patterns generated by the crystalline towers. "On it, Commander, creating a series of concentric force fields now." As the shimmering barriers took shape around the planet, Stone turned to his communications officer. "Get me Lieutenant Harper." Harper's voice crackled through the comm system moments later. "Harper here, sir. Awaiting orders." "Lieutenant, I need you to divide your squadron into 3 groups. Position them along the equator. First group engages the incoming fleet, second maintains our defensive perimeter, and third stands by as rapid response. Can you handle it?" "Consider it done, Commander," Harper replied, his voice filled with dedication. On the bridge of his cloaked precursor ship, Alex Chen watched the alien flagship closely. An idea formed in his mind as he observed the chaos of the battlefield. "Commander Stone, I'm initiating a decoy maneuver. Activating holographic projectors now." Suddenly, multiple identical versions of Chen's ship appeared across the battlefield, spreading out in all directions. The alien fleet's sensors lit up with confusion as they struggled to distinguish the real threat from the convincing illusions. Back on the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Volkov monitored the enhanced Xenoraptors as they formed a living, pulsing network across the landscape. The creatures' bioelectric fields interconnected precursor installations, creating an instantaneous communication grid that enhanced the effectiveness of the planet's defenses. "Dr. Volkov to Commander Stone," she reported. "The Xenoraptor network is operational. I'm dispatching a group to interface with the crystalline towers. We might be able to unlock additional capabilities." Stone nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Doctor. Keep me updated on any new developments." In the depths of space, Captain Zorn's mercenary fleet took up strategic positions around the planet's moons. Zorn's gruff voice came through the comm system. "Stone, my ships are in place. We'll use these moons as cover for hit-and-run attacks on the alien fleet. Just say the word." "Proceed, Captain," Stone replied. "Coordinate your strikes with Harper's squadrons for maximum effect." As the alien armada began its final push towards the planet, Dr. Sarah Chen's partially controlled precursor drones formed a formidable barrier. The autonomous machines executed complex evasive patterns while returning fire, creating a chaotic and impenetrable field of battle. In the energy converter facility, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt noticed an alarming spike in the planet's core readings. "Commander, the intense energy output has triggered a reaction in the planet's core. Pockets of pure precursor energy are surfacing across the planet." Stone's brow furrowed with concern. "Can you contain it, Doctor?" "Better than that," Reinhardt replied, his voice filled with excitement. "I can harness it, routing the energy into our defensive systems now. Prepare for a significant power boost." As if on cue, the alien flagship launched a massive energy projectile towards the planet. Stone watched it approach on the holographic display, his heart racing. "Johnson, is the primary defense cannon operational?" "Yes, sir," Johnson replied. "Activating now." A colossal beam of concentrated energy erupted from the planet's surface, intercepting the alien projectile in a blinding explosion that lit up the upper atmosphere. Seizing the moment of confusion, Harper's voice cut through the comm chatter. "Strike team, with me! We're going for their power core." Stone watched as Harper's squad of precursor ships streaked towards the alien flagship, their weapons blazing. Multiple explosions bloomed across the massive vessel's hull as Harper's team found their mark. "Chen," Stone called out, "the flagship's defenses are down. This is your chance." "Understood, Commander," Chen replied. "Initiating infiltration now." As Chen's stealth ship slipped inside the crippled alien vessel, Stone turned his attention back to the larger battle. The alien fleet's formation was beginning to falter, creating opportunities that Captain Zorn's forces quickly exploited. "All units, press the attack," Stone ordered. "Don't let them regroup." The combined forces of Harper's squadrons, Zorn's mercenaries, and the controlled precursor drones launched a coordinated assault on the remaining alien ships. The superior positioning, advanced technology, and strategic use of the disruptive energy field quickly overwhelmed the alien fleet's remaining defenses. As the tide of battle turned decisively in their favor, Stone allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. They had weathered the storm and emerged victorious, but he knew that this was only the beginning. The activation of the planet's full defensive capabilities had sent detectable energy signatures across the galaxy. Whatever came next, humanity and its newfound allies would face it together, armed with the power of precursor technology and the invaluable experience gained from this cosmic crucible. As the last alien ships were neutralized and the battle subsided, Commander Stone took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the holographic display of the newly secured star system. The immediate threat had passed, but he knew their work was just the beginning. "All units, stand down from combat positions," Stone ordered. "Damage reports to be filed within the hour. Johnson, Chen, I want a full analysis of our new defensive capabilities." As the command center buzzed with activity, Stone turned to his communications officer. "Call a meeting of all key personnel in the newly discovered Precursor Command Center. We need to discuss our next steps." Within the hour, the leaders of the various factions gathered in the cavernous Precursor facility. The air was thick with anticipation as Stone prepared to address the group. Just as he was about to speak, the doors slid open, revealing Alex Chen with the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor at his side. The room fell silent as Chen and the massive predator entered. The Xenoraptor's scales shimmered with an otherworldly glow, its eyes scanning the room with an intelligence that seemed beyond that of a mere animal. "Commander," Chen said, his voice tinged with excitement, "the Alpha Prime has something to share with us." As if on cue, the Xenoraptor's eyes began to pulse with a soft blue light. Suddenly, holographic images filled the air around them, depicting vast star systems, ancient technology, and the history of a long-lost civilization. Dr. Sarah Chen gasped. "It's communicating, sharing information about the precursors." The assembled leaders watched in awe as the story of the precursor civilization unfolded before them. As the final images faded, Dr. Marcus Reinhardt stepped forward, his eyes wide with realization. "Commander," he said, his voice trembling with excitement, "this world we've secured, it's not just a defensive outpost. It's a seed ship, a vessel designed to travel between galaxies and establish new precursor colonies." Stone's mind raced with the implications of this revelation. "Dr. Reinhardt, I want you to study the ship's propulsion systems immediately. Johnson, assist him in accessing the precursor systems." As Reinhardt and Johnson hurried off to their task, the room erupted into excited chatter. Stone raised his hand for silence. "This discovery changes everything," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "We now possess technology beyond our wildest dreams, but with it comes great responsibility." Before Stone could continue, Reinhardt's voice crackled through the comm system. "Commander, you need to see this." Stone and the others rushed to the nearest viewing port. Outside, the massive crystalline towers that had emerged during the battle were pulsing with energy. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate. "The towers," Reinhardt explained breathlessly, "they're part of an intricate faster-than-light drive. We've activated it." As they watched, the planet's surface began to shift and change. Structures rearranged themselves, forming a more streamlined shape. An energy field enveloped the atmosphere, and slowly, impossibly, the entire planet ship began to rise from its orbit. Stone's mind raced with possibilities. In that moment, he made a decision that would alter the course of human history. "Listen up," he said, his voice firm and resolute. "We're taking this ship. All human and allied forces are to board immediately. That includes the captured alien vessels and their crews." He turned to Lieutenant Harper. "Jack, I want you to oversee the integration of our fleet with the seed ship systems. Captain Zorn, work with Harper to retrofit your ships with precursor tech." As the others scrambled to carry out his orders, Stone approached Dr. Volkov and the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor. "Doctor, I need your enhanced Xenoraptors to act as a biological interface for the ship. Can you make that happen?" Volkov nodded, already formulating plans. "Consider it done, Commander. I'll also begin developing a program to create more human Xenoraptor hybrid pilots like Chen." Over the next few hours, the seed ship hummed with activity. Precursor vessels were docked in massive hangar bays, while Zorn's ships underwent rapid modifications. Volkov's Xenoraptors spread throughout the vessel, forming living conduits for instantaneous communication and control. As the final preparations were made, Dr. Sarah Chen approached Stone with a tablet in hand. "Commander, I've made a breakthrough in decoding the precursor language. Their original mission, it was to seed the universe with life, to spread knowledge and foster the growth of new civilizations." Stone nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Then we'll continue their mission. We'll explore the galaxy, reactivate dormant precursor installations, and share our knowledge with peaceful civilizations." He turned to address the assembled crew, human and alien alike. "We stand at the threshold of a new era. Today we embark on a journey not just of exploration, but of enlightenment. We carry with us the legacy of the precursors and the hopes of countless worlds." Stone's gaze fell on Alex Chen and the Alpha Prime Xenoraptor. "Chen, you and your partner have the honor of initiating the launch sequence." Chen nodded, his eyes meeting those of the ancient predator. As one, they approached the central control panel. Chen placed his hand on the console, his mind melding with both the Xenoraptor and the advanced precursor technology. The crystalline towers pulsed with blinding energy, engulfing the entire ship in a dazzling display of light. With a low hum that grew to a thunderous roar, the seed ship broke free from the star system. As they accelerated to faster-than-light speeds, Stone looked out at the sea of stars before them. Humanity had proven itself capable of not just surviving among the cosmic powers, but of leading them into a new age of discovery and cooperation. The seed ship vanished into the depths of space, carrying with it the combined knowledge of ancient civilizations and the indomitable spirit of humanity. Their first destination, a distant star system where another precursor seed ship lay dormant, waiting to be awakened. As the crew settled into their new roles, a sense of anticipation filled the air. They had only just begun to unlock the secrets of their new home, and the true scope of their journey was yet to be revealed. The galaxy, with all its wonders and challenges, awaited them.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.